What's on me, guy? I just blasted the link in the thread because apparently no one knows how to check the email for the live audience.
We're live.
All right, cool. How come I'm only seeing you, Chris?
I don't know.
Uh,
VIP.
what'd you touch here, guy?
Here, I'll make you
No, it's fine. It's
host.
fine, but I'm just looking directly at you for some reason.
There's like a 20-second delay. It's awesome.
Nice, but
I'm just gonna look at the YouTube one the whole time and be confused the
yeah,
entire
yeah.
time.
I'm trying to look at the second Zoom window and the YouTube thing with that on mute, and look
So,
at you guys' bios to kick it
Yeah,
off.
you need to close YouTube.
so you're gonna have a Zoom
Close
chat
it out.
and a YouTube chat.
Yeah, yeah. You're in
Oh.
charge, Keith. You got to moderate them both. You and Chris and all the other people that are here.
Well, I should be doing you a solid because you've been moderating my show for a long time.
You do me a solid every week, buddy.
Mm.
Every week, give me something to do, I appreciate it. But all right, I'm gonna kick it off and welcome everyone to the Boston Reefers Society presenting Skeptical Reef Keeping with Richard Ross and Dong Zhao. So in case you guys don't know who I am, I'm Paul. I'm the president of the Boston Reefers Society. And like I just said, we have a couple of great educators to learn from, Richard Ross and our very own Dong Zhao. In case someone isn't sure of either of these guys, here's a brief bio for them. Dong has a PhD in chemistry and worked for several pharmaceutical companies in various therapeutic areas, including anti-inflammatory, cancer, pain management, and infectious diseases. He developed his first interest in marine invertebrates when he was working as a postdoc at the University of Virginia. Dong has been in the aquarium hobby since he was in college and got into the saltwater side of things in 2004 after he set up his first marine tank for a Nemo and after he discovered the Boston Reefers Society. About 10 years ago, Dong co-founded his first company on drug discovery. Soon after that, he was able to combine his passion for coral and his experience in the pharmaceutical industry and co-founded a new company, eCove Biomarine. This company focused on aquaculture coral for drug discovery and bone grafting. His current company, Acro Incorporated, was then founded to hold the intellectual properties and to study coral farming. Acro is now his primary focus. The company provides aquacultured coral, mainly SPS, for the hobby. And Richard Ross is known for the Skeptical Reef Keeping article series, groundbreaking work with cephalopod husbandry, entertaining and informative talks, managing the ambitious 212,000-gallon reef tank at the Steinhardt Aquarium in the California Academy of Sciences, getting stuff done in the field, and spawning acropora enclosed systems at the Albright Lab and in a secret home lab. Richard has kept saltwater animals for over 30 years, has worked in the aquarium industry and trade at every level, and has consulted for coral farms, collecting stations, academia, public aquariums, and for private research projects. Richard was presented with the 2015 Masner Aquarist of the Year Award, now the Masner Award, and his work has been covered by National Geographic, Scientific American, Animal Planet, Penn Sunday School, NPR Science Friday, Discovery News, Fox News, and more. Richard is also co-host of the popular ReefBeef podcast. So with that, I'd like to wish Dong and Richard both a warm welcome, and I'll open it up to you guys.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
Oh, so are we? He and I are talking back to each other. There's no moderator.
You guys can speak however you'd like to speak, or I can moderate if you'd like to moderate. Whatever you guys want to do. Whatever you guys want to do, you tell me. I apologize. There was someone that set this up, couldn't make it in tonight, so it's kind of left on myself.
Oh, no problem. I think if you, it would be easier for me if you would ask us there's questions or
Yeah, absolutely.
We have that list.
Yeah.
Otherwise I'll take over, and I don't want to do that.
Yep, give me 1 second. So let's see.
So I have been a fan of Dong for a long time, and I've never met you or actually talked to you. So I am more than thrilled to be seeing you and chatting with you. So I hope your weekend's been going okay.
Oh, you're great. Actually, the same here. I've been listening to every episode of your ReefBeef. It really, really cracked me up a lot of times. Actually, I'm a big fan of your article, the skeptical reef keeping from a long time ago. And you okay?
Yeah, I'm just dying.
Okay. Yeah, maybe one day I can get on your ReefBeef. I can speak freely, right?
Yeah, you've been on the list for a long time. The list is like stupid long, and we can never. It's always so hard to pick because we're not doing weekly. But we would love to have you on. You were definitely on the list.
Yeah, thank you. So your shows really cracked me up, and about that, well, yeah, I don't mind the language. I actually quite enjoy it. Well,
Yeah,
for this show that is more family oriented, so I just refrain for speaking anything that is.
Yeah, no,
Little bit.
always. I'm actually more surprised. The most surprising thing about the ReefBeef podcast is that it is true that some people really don't like the language sometimes, and it's funny because we're not. I don't think we're gratuitous. I just find it fascinating that that's actually a thing. My brain doesn't work that way.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So, whatever people want is fine. I was just surprised that it was an actual issue sometimes.
Well, actually, it's kind of funny that I watched some of the gamer live stream. So those those channels that with interesting language always that is the most popular one.
Right.
Yeah, well, yes, it is.
Yeah.
So that recently you guys did a ICP study, is that right?
Yeah. ReefBeef helped, and then Sanjay and I wrote that up, and it really just found what I think we knew before, and kind of pretty much what we knew when Chris Maupin and I wrote that first article about it in 2014 or 2015.
Yep.
It just seemed to make it a little bit. We had more numbers now because it was a comparison. So yeah, that came out like a month or two ago, I guess.
Yeah. So as a chemist, I think the ICP is really challenging to get it right. It's really tough. Especially the technology itself is it highly depends on the operator.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not really like black and white science because there's so many signals overlapping.
Yeah.
And the computer have to the operator need to interpret what exactly the value is. The good thing about computer is that you feed it the data, you feed it a sample, it give you a result.
Right.
But that is not necessarily representing that what's in the sample. That is what the computer thing does.
Yeah, I had an ICP test I sent once that came back with high arsenic and high chromium.
Wow, then
and I wrote them back and I went, I don't believe this. And they went, oh yeah, you're right. It's not right. And it was like, but that's what you sent me. I don't know what to do with your company at all. Will you change them if I call you or not? But I think what we tried to do with the recent one was, no standards, more like from the hobbyist standpoint. And we looked at 3 different companies, which we're not naming because we don't care about that. The point was to look at how stable's the wrong word, but how consistent are the results across one vendor and between 2 vendors. And, like we would expect, I would think with ICP, the bigger the constituent element that you're testing in the sample, the more stable the result is. And when the element gets smaller,
Mhm.
the more funky the result gets. And it looks like crisscrossing ICP companies is as insane result wise as, you know, using two different reagent tests on your desk. They're just never going to match. So the smaller it is, the more you have to squint at the number. And we actually were able to give some percentages just from the data we got, figure percentages of, you know, plus or minus accuracy, you know, how close we think that is. And some of them was, you know, 20% off. Some of them were 50% off. Some of them were much better. Yeah,
I think we should start sending samples of known concentrations to ICP companies and then seeing what they come up with. Like,
we did
here's
that.
a sample.
we did that and got a lot of weird grief for that at the first paper.
Yeah.
But really what happens is on different days it's going to be different. So it's not it's a really wonderful tool, I think, for broad brushstrokes and how people are using it to zip into micro trace elements or even trace elements. I kind of go, I don't know if you're really getting much useful from that. I don't know if it's actually resolving to the point where, you know, moving vanadium, I don't know why you're dosing vanadium anyway, but vanadium by 0.003, I think you're just crazy. It's not that fine.
Yeah.
In my
so
experience.
a lot of these ICP companies, I don't know firsthand what they're doing, but I know for salt water, they need to dilute them down to not ruin their machines first off, and to get the resolution. And it's like, okay, so how much are you actually diluting the sample down, and what are you actually getting out of the sample? For like environmental companies, if you sent them a saltwater sample, they're going to be diluting that down a lot just to get the resolution because they're going to ruin their equipment. Whereas these like saltwater testing companies, you know, I don't know what they're doing, but as far as EPA certified companies, like the resolution is just not there for full salt water. So they're really diluting down the samples. So
yeah, I think the real problem is they're black boxes. We don't know what any of them are doing. I guess the one Oshimo, I don't know how to pronounce it. I tend to avoid companies that are in a different country than me because things take a long time and then even shipping of something gets weird. But they're one in Europe. They seem to be trying to give information, you know, about their LOD and about their processes. But everybody else is doing it their own way, and we don't know what it is. And it's different from, it sounds like you have experience with them. Nobody else in the world is using ICP in the way the reef keeping hobby is. It just
No.
isn't done. So for me, that's a big squint.
I think
Very
that
big
yes, I
swing.
always wondering that how they can do it that cheap.
Yeah.
It's just almost impossible because that to do a ICP analysis for just some major element, we're not talking about vanadium or that kind of thing. I think that to get some reasonable data, for example, like the OES, I'm not talking about the mass spec, the OES, you're probably looking at about, it's just for the salary, for the cost of the technician, you're probably looking at about $500 to $1,000 per sample.
700. So my wife works for an environmental testing laboratory, and I've been really trying to get her to sample, but it's around $700 for everything.
Yeah, that make more sense.
Yeah,
because that the work that involved into getting an accurate data, but sort of accurate data, that means it's a reasonable data. It costs that much. So, for example, if you do 30 something element analysis, you're looking at probably $1,200 per sample.
Yeah.
So how can you do it? Well, think about it, and the wholesale cost of ICP kit. I'm not going to talk about how much it costs.
Yeah.
That's significantly less than what you pay for on the market, right? And also that including the two-way shipping.
Yeah.
Sorry, the shipping to oversee all that kind of thing. So how can it be done at that cheap? So if the data is reliable, accurate, I think the EPA should all outsource their testing to these companies. Well, think about it, $700 versus $50. So if the $50 give you a reasonable data, why spend $700, right? So there's some magical thing going on that you can get the data. Actually, one of my friends was joking with me and said, I sent you a sample. Can you do ICP in your basement? I said, sure. Before you send a sample, let me tell you this. Your alkalinity is 9, your calcium is 50, and your vanadium is 2,000. You need to do 2 water change. It's simple as that. So then now you PayPal for $50.
I did some tarot card water testing, which was exactly like that. Because why not, right? Chris Maupin, who wrote the first article with me, because I'm not an ICP technician or a mass spec technician, but he is, and he runs a lab at one of the big Texas universities, and he's consulted regularly by the companies to, troubleshoot their machines in other places. And he looked at it and said it, pretty much everything you just said, because it's so they've got to not be doing calibrations for each test. Number one,
yes, yes.
And when you send them to any other company, you get a bunch of information about the state of the instrument. And that's got to be one of the ways that they're really cutting costs. So, but we have no idea how often they calibrate, what the calibration data is like, how often they're cleaning the nebulizer. We don't know. We don't know nothing.
So the ICP mass spec is really getting me worried, because I worked with mass spec before. So if you bring a saltwater sample to a chemistry laboratory and say, hey, do the mass spec to analyze this, they will just beat you up and kick you out of the door, because that sample can just ruin the $500,000 machine.
Right.
So yeah, basically, I don't know how to do it with that cheap. And then I think just after you shoot the sample in a mass spec, the cleaning process probably take you a day.
Yeah.
You basically, I think it's more like it's pulling the data out of thin air, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that, because the cost of doing this analysis is there. It's not like if you're doing 2 million tests and then you can drop the cost significantly. You cannot, because that for the ICP MS, ICP OES, there is really no shortcut. There's really no way to cut down the labor, the time, the calibration, the cleaning, the internal standard. You can cut those down, and that is why it's magical that you can get a reasonable number with that low cost. So with that saying is that the reality maybe is not reasonable with that kind of low cost. That's probably why you see all these variations. So, but one thing is quite different is that I think the fauna marine probably is a little bit different. That's my own opinion. Okay, just because that they have the scientists there, they probably, because they use the ICP for their own coral farm, and then they're spending a lot of cost on their own development, like the scientific method, whatever, that kind of thing. Maybe they do a better way to do ICP tests, but the cost of maintaining the machine is not being factored into the cost for the consumer. That's what I think.
Yeah.
So that way, that maybe they're still more affordable. That could possibly the case.
I think
But
Fauna
for
Marine.
the-
I think Fauna Marine is the only ICP company with a coral lab, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's
And
true, because they're
Yeah.
using
I know
it for their
Claude.
lab.
I know Claude says that they really use their corals a lot in terms of trying to you know, make sure that the results make sense and are in sync and kind of calibrate with the way the corals are looking. And that's always, I think, something that's very important that we should tend to try to do a lot of, which is let the corals tell the story more so than the data.
Actually,
Yeah.
absolutely correct. Yeah, the coral tell actually the most stories told by the coral. The thing is that the understanding of salt water, so far the knowledge is so little from the how the trace element works, how all the bacteria works. We know so little. So I think the only way to tell that if the coral is happy is by looking at them. Otherwise, there's no amount of tests can give you a picture, not even a complete picture, not even a 10% picture. I think it's less than 1% picture for all the testing. If you do all the testing available on the market, we probably only get about less than 1% of the information on what's going on in the tank. But the coral tells a story. For example, in the pharmaceutical industry, the in vivo data, that means that the tested drug in animal, that tells the true story. You can do a lot of modeling, lots of biological assay to looking at certain aspects, just like taking ICP and do a biomic test. But by the end of the day, by shooting the drug into the animal, you eventually go to human, really tells you the true story. And then why there's so many drugs fail. Actually, 99% of the drug fail when they go to clinic. It's because that with all this testing, it did not give you a full picture. Not even a full picture, not even a partial 50%, give you 1% of the picture. So eventually, when the drug go into the human, well, that gives you a much better picture. So that's why I think the same thing can apply to coral keeping. Just by looking at the tank. And that tells you more information than any test you can do. Especially right these days that all these number, it doesn't have to be stick in certain narrow range. Actually, the range is pretty big. For example, calcium. Well, 350 versus 450, 100 ppm difference. For the coral, they don't care. So why should we just keep it that narrow? No, it doesn't matter. For alkalinity, 7 to 11 makes no difference. We don't have to just keep it in such a narrow band of thing. And just look at the coral. They're happy. They're fine. Their problems is out. They keep growing, grow more and more than I can sell. That's good enough.
I agree.
One thing I do notice with the Fondamer and ICP test compared to other ones is they give you the filter. I think the filter is pretty big as far as phosphates, nitrates. You know how much is the particulate. It's better than nothing though. Because when you think about it, you're putting it in the vial and you're sending it overseas or where it's going to be breaking down. If he can get out some of that detritus and schmuck, it's not going to break down.
Chris, I think the Ocean sends a filter too.
Yeah, and well, at the same time, the companies that don't seem to send filters, people seem to be having results that they're happy with. So I get
Keyword happy with.
Yeah, no, but absolutely. But even with the and my worry, whatever it is that I'm designing a product called ReefSebo, which is a placebo product that will say it right on it. And where I'm stuck with it right now is
it's DI water, right?
Is I'd like it to smell, and I'd like the user to have to do something to it.
So throw some sulfur in there.
Well, yeah, the smell is the hardest one because anything that smells could possibly do something to your tank, right? The do something is like, well, here's a little sand. We're just going to say, package A and not say what it is and pour it in and, you know, shake for 5 minutes, let's sit for 10 minutes and then shake. And that makes people invest in the placebo even more, right? So that's why as soon as I saw some of them were sent with the filter, now not the aquabiomics kind of testing, not that, but this testing, I went, God, is that just something to make people feel like they're doing something so they believe them even more? I don't know. And then I think there were two other thoughts I had while you guys were talking. One was MS and OES. People think they're interchangeable and they're not. And I was kind of annoyed. I was more than annoyed. I was really grumpy. I was doing a series of comparisons that I was going to write up, and I sent the test to a company, and they sent it back, but it was sent in as OES, and they tested with MS and sent me the results back. And it was like, but now that's not. First of all, that's not what I paid for. And then you changed it. You know, they just said, you know, well, it's better. It's like, but that's not. You've made all the data for your company now useless, and I have to throw you out. So, and I'll never use you again, because that's just a ridiculous thing to sell something that says it's one thing and then change it and not tell the customer.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of these days I'll get my wife to take the samples. I'm going to do a side-by-side comparison compared to an ICP company and a EPA authorized company and see what they actually compare like.
I think
I
we
think
need
that's a
to do
great
it
idea.
over months. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, so I think that's a great idea to look at the EPA, the $700 test versus the $50 test.
Yeah. And I think it can't be a snapshot.
Yeah.
Because what we think is probably happening is they're not calibrating or they're not cleaning as often. And the question is, what kind of drift are we looking at? But then again, at the same time, people feel happy with it. People seem to be getting, well, and by happy, I mean, they seem to be getting results that they're comfortable taking action from, and they're pleased with the results over time. So it could be a couple of things. I mean, and which is probably it just doesn't matter so much. You know, I guess I can see when, you know, when you've got, if your calcium is 100, or, you know, then I could see that being a problem in ICP, and, you know, that testing will tell you that. And I suppose there's some, you know, for that, different levels, you know, but we don't, like you were saying, we know calcium, 100 ppm swing, we don't care, right? We don't know what kind of, you know, phosphate, you know, it used to be thought you needed to be in this 0.05 band. And now, you know, there's people, not just me, with, you know, tanks running above 1 and 2, and they're just fine. 1 and 2, not 0.1, 1 and 2. So it's going to be really interesting if we ever really can nail any of this down to find out what really matters and what kind of, how much slop we can take in the system.
Hey, Rich.
The thing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rich. Or
I was just going to ask
Go ahead.
Rich, have you changed the way you utilize ICP? I mean, do you utilize ICP for your tanks?
Once in a while. Yeah, once in a while. I couldn't look at the tests and feel like there was anything actionable given what I know about the process. So what does that mean for me? I'll send it in, and if something looks completely out of whack, I'll either send another one and see if that's, you know, if that shows up the next time again or not. Like with the chromium and the arsenic one. They said, oh, that's what they said. No, you don't have any arsenic, but you've got chromium. And I talked to Chris Mopp, and then he went, you don't have chromium. One of the ones, I might have that backwards. They said, no, you don't have chromium, but you have arsenic. And Chris was like, you don't have arsenic, because of the way the bands cross. So I would use it for looking at like big dips, maybe. You know, what's a broad shot of what's going on with this water, and does anything need to be brought up? But as we get smaller and as the numbers get wider in the decimal places, I squint more. So, I'm not, I guess for traces, my thought is just kind of make sure there's some in there.
Yeah.
And so as long as
they are definitely diluting these samples for ICP testing.
they have to.
So that's why it's like, okay, how accurate are these really like minute trace elements?
Yeah. So it's really hard, Keith, to not want to use it. But I also don't, I'm not sure what we're chasing.
I guess
The one that we're chasing now is like fluorine, right? People are excited about fluorine because it makes stuff bluer. I don't know what that means, and I don't see blue really well anyway. So my friend Matt said he did it and he saw it more blue, and I said, "What did you have before and after pictures?" He goes, "You won't be able to tell because I don't see color that well anyway." But it's like
I've had that. I've had that experience in terms of dosing fluoride. I've seen blues pop on corals that I'd not seen that blue before. But I guess the question also, both to you and to Dong is, I think people are using the ICP test because they're a lot of instances they're dosing trace elements, right? And they want to get a read in terms of whether they're dosing enough or if they're dosing too much. And so I guess the question is, like, in terms of trace element dosing and ICP testing, how much will that make a difference on a reef tank in terms of the health and well-being of a reef tank, in terms of dialing it in with trace element dosing in conjunction with ICP testing? To what kind of level can you get above to where if you're not doing that? Or does it not even matter?
I don't think it matters because that the ICP just not precise enough to give you the answer about to looking at like the vanadium level, the tiny level. It's just not precise enough. At least the way they do it, it's not precise enough to give you actually any meaningful data. So if it give you data, but are those data really valid or useful? That's the question. So I don't really think that ICP OES, at least this method, is capable of guiding the dosing of the trace element. And especially if you do a lot of water change, I don't think it actually even matters. And also when I did a lot of literature search, well, many trace elements actually utilized by bacteria. But now the thing is that bacteria is basically it's a mystery box so far. What exactly is good? What exactly is bad? How much is good? How much is bad? We know very little about that. Actually, there are very little scientific study done on that. It's just recently that there's more attention paid on that aspect in the scientific community. And before that, it's like a vacuum. So far that I think that we are trying to, as a hobby, we try to run before we can even claw. So we're going too fast. And of course, that there's a many company will take this advantage to make some money. Actually, it's all money driven. A lot of things like that, and that is the dangerous part. Well, think about this way. Well, Keith, your tank back like 20 years ago, you won the Reef Central Tank of the Month, and look at those tanks. Look at your old tank. Do you have ICP? No, you don't even have a phosphate test kit.
I never tested for phosphate. I never tested for magnesium. It's just
Exactly.
calcium alkalinity and nitrate and pH and temperature. That was about it.
Yeah. So you see that the history already demonstrated without this fancy technology, you can achieve the goal actually probably easier because there's a less chance for something to screw up. I think that the major problem about all these testing tools we have these days, first of all, many of them are not accurate. For example, like the pH probe. In a laboratory, you are not going to buy a $20 to $60 consumer grade pH probe, try to get an accurate number out of that. It's impossible. So you're not going to spending $600, $1,000 to get a pH Pro. Those things, no, to get a accurate number. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that the tool that are available for this hobby for testing is not accurate, and it doesn't tell you much of the picture. And the thing is that there's the history already demonstrated. You can keep a beautiful reef with jam-packed with SPS, the holy grail way to do it, without any of these modern tools to spend the money on those kind of testing methods. So the more you test, the more confused you are. For example, like the drug discovery also has the same issue, is that the more tools we have, the worse, the less drugs go onto the market. Because that in the old days, well, there's no fancy tool to test Series A versus Series B. You just grab a rat and shot the chemical in it. Oh, it dies. Okay, this drug is gone. And grab another one and shot in. Use animal testing. And then there's more drug being discovered, successfully being discovered that way. These days, you got the computer modeling. Okay, so you put on the computer tell you, no, this doesn't work. Okay, you miss a lot of things. And even the computer tells you, yeah, this works. And when you go to the animal, it doesn't. Many things happen like this, especially as a hobby and especially with an expensive hobby as it is. I think what we need to do is really need to sit back and relax and pay more attention to the coral instead of paying more attention to the test results. Those test results, well, the best scenario is that the test result means nothing. The worst scenario is that you take action on inaccurate results. You end up ruin your tank. So there is a more tank crash. There are more dino issue these days, more cyano issue these days. A lot of things due to the bacterial imbalance in the environment. So we see more trouble than before. I think that
I blame dry rock on all that stuff.
yeah, exactly. All the dry rock, all that kind of crap. So then the man-made one too. So I think that with all these kind of thing available to the hobbyist, it actually makes things even worse. So what happened that in the old day, go buy some live rock actually from your fellow hobbyist or from the ocean, whatever, and just do the old school way. Do your water change, do the traditional way. You may end up with a much better results. So I've been monitoring many of our customers to see their tank. So I'm collecting data. So what I found out is that people do more testing. You end up with worse result for the tank. People sit back, relax, and maybe they're busy. They just do the water change and doesn't care too much about it and make sure the alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, everything is in check. And doesn't even test phosphate and nitrate, and they end up with a much better scenario, but much better reef tank. For example, one of my customers told me that every time he removed one equipment off his reef tank looks better. So before that, he has all these bells and whistles, all the fancy stuff, and then eventually he would take them out one by one. Right now, it's just very simple: a return pump, a protein skimmer, and a good LED light, J-Bow power head. Nothing fancy, and then he sit back, relax, and then nothing. He don't even do any ICP test. Once a while, he grab a sulfur test kit and look at alkalinity, and that's it. And then he end up much more relaxing, enjoying the hobby. And his coral growing so fast, and now he need to bring the coral back to me. So I take this coral back because it's out of the room. He's running out of the room just because of that. I've seen people that have all the gizmos. Then one gizmo break, the whole tank gone. This thing, the heater broke. Well, the Wi-Fi heater, the heater actually you can control by your phone. What the heck? Why do you need to do that? So then the heater leak. Okay, whole tank, boom, all gone. And then get some fancy power head, the fancy Italian make power head. Well, just like Italian sports car, they fell. So then the Italian make power head basically busted open in his water change barrel, and then basically polluting all his water, the new water, makeup water. and then he changed his water, kill his tank, done. So basically, is that the more we tweak around the reef, we may not get better result. Just like ReefBeef that always said, if the juice is worth squeezing. So
Yeah.
basically, just like that. So there is many relaxing, traditional old school way to keep your reef tank. It's a hobby. You're supposed to enjoy it. You're not going to spend all this money to get more headache, and then eventually your reef tank looks like crap. So, for example, that I'm always not a big fan of the moonshiner method, but I think that people who do moonshiner, they do have some beautiful reef tank. It's because they pay more attention to the tank. That's what it is. It's not because this magical expensive bottle has some magical power. No, if you're willing to spend the time to dosing this, dosing that every day, dropping this, dropping that, you pay a lot of attention to your tank. For example, when I walk by my tank, I look at, oh, one coral fell off the rack. I pick it up, put it back. I didn't even realize I'm doing that. So basically, the more attention you pay to your tank, well, you get better results. So you can buy Richard's the magical elixir, the placebo thing, and I would say
Placebo effect.
yeah, placebo effect. So it should be well, if I were you, I would put distilled water in that bottle, add some food coloring so that there seems there's something in there. And then on the instructions that you have to shake it 52.5 times. Well, I don't know how to do the half times.
Right.
And then you have to hold this bottle close to your chest and jump around, try to build a bear.
And you have to refrigerate it.
Yeah.
And it's got to be refrigerated.
It's got to be used within 7 days.
Yeah. All of that stuff.
You guys are
I
all
mean-
haters.
Back to the pH
Yeah.
talk. Like, so pH, as far as EPA method, like that's a field measurement only. So after it's taken, like that's it. Like,
Yeah.
after it's
volatile.
taken, it's questionable. So that is another factor to play. And also, like, pH meters for as far as lab, like those are calibrated, if not every use, per
Every day. Yeah.
So that's another thing
Yeah.
to think about. Like, how accurate are these pH readings?
See, I get to live in a world where I don't care how accurate my probes are or my testing is. I just want the trends to be consistent. I don't want any crazy bumps. If they're smooth, I don't care what the actual number is. I was just talking to somebody about pH probes. I think my pH probes are all like 5 years old. And I don't care because they're giving me a reading that kind of works. So I don't care what the actual number is in my calcium reactor. Is it dissolving at 6.3? That's where I currently need it to be. I have no idea. I just know that at that level, it's keeping the parameters I want that device to be keeping up in a way that makes me comfortable and keeps the animals comfortable. But I have so little interest at this stage in the hobby of knowing it. Is it 6.3 or is it 6.5 or is it 6.2 or is it? I don't care. I just want it to work. Like you were saying, the hobby, this is the hobby for me, not selling things. It's having this stuff grow in a way that makes me happy. It's spawning stuff in the other room like an idiot, which is the stupidest thing anybody can ever do. And everyone should totally do it because it's totally cool. But besides that, it's just, I want to enjoy it. I've never cared about showing pictures of what's under here, stuff covered with salt creep, because I'm not in the salt creepless hobby. I don't care about salt creep. As long as it's not over the side of the tank and dripping on everything, I don't care if my pipes have got a salt creep. It just doesn't. I never see it. It's behind this. So it's what are you there? What are you here for? What are you doing this for? And I dig people who are crazy and excited about chasing down these numbers. And can we actually hone in on what's actually happening? And can we make it easier and better? The part that worries me is that we're the hobby in general has taught people over the last 5 or 10 years that this is the answer, that this is how you have a successful tank with ICP testing and dry rock. And that's the way to do it. And, you know, we had all of us on the side screaming, no, that's not the way to do it. And then 10 years goes by and those people who were pushing the dry rock come back and go, well, we learned over the last 20 years not to use the dry rock. And it's like, we told you that when you started. And it's not that you can't use dry rock. You have to know what to do with dry rock to use it. You know, if you're setting up a tank with dry rock, the idea, and it's got to be good, it's got to be at least useful dry rock. It can't be just like solid concrete, right? It's got to have some porosity to it. They have to have put something into that. When they mix the artificial, I'm sorry, I'm mixing dry and artificial. It's two different things. But, you know, you're going to extend the time that the tank is not going to be exciting for you by using rock that needs to cure on its own. You know, if you're curing your rock in your tank and you're using dry rock, you probably got 5 months of it not being pretty, or with your lights way down low as benthic succession moves forward. So I think we veered away from, we veered more towards sellability and making the hobby bigger, and we lost the path of practicality and how does it work. And I think it grew the hobby, but I think it made a lot of people grumpy and leave the hobby. I think people started leaving the hobby faster than they were before because it was pitched to them as this is easy. And it's not. It's complicated and stupid and crazy and wonderful. And they were told it would be inexpensive and easy and it would work. And then 6 months goes on and everything dies and they're covered in algae and they're doing what everybody says and it doesn't work. But their numbers are perfect. So it's a really interesting, I don't clean this thing. I haven't cleaned the glass in here for 2 months. Right? You leave it for a little while. You leave it for a couple of weeks.
It looks very clear for 2 months.
I cleaned it today because I knew I was coming on here. I better. That's the only time I clean it, right? Is when it's going to be on camera or people are coming over, or that's not true. I lie a little bit. I clean it more often. If I clean it every 2 months, I am so happy with my tank because the day I clean it, I go, wow, everything does look good. Because I haven't really been looking at it. So I'm a big fan of benign neglect, I guess is what I'm saying. We spend all this time trying to make the tank stable, whatever that means. But then we start doing all this stuff to it that throws the stability off, you know? And the last time I chased a number, I thought, oh, let's see what happens if I get more iodine, right? Iodine's supposed to be good. Everyone's telling me that if I grow more algae, it will bring my phosphate down. It won't. I feed too much. I think I can put a nail in that coffin. If you feed as much as I do, you're not, unless you have a huge algae filter, which I'm tempted to get one from Jason and try it because I know a place I can put it now where I'll actually work at it. But you need to grow a lot of algae, and I don't want to be an algae farmer. I want to be a coral farmer. And I forgot what my point was. So I'm going to stop talking.
Are you still carbon dosing?
Not with any realism. I use the TE Elements by Bob Stark by ESV, and that the TE Plus, the Trace Elements Plus. So that's got some carbon in it. I like a little carbon for the potential feeding coral benefits it has. The carbon feeds bacteria, and they're going to eat it. I like the idea that I'm topping off trace elements, that I'm making sure that there's some in there. When I did the iodine, I screwed up. It shot way high and I killed a bunch of stuff. And I was like, why? Richard, what are you doing? You know better than this.
Live and learn.
You know, I'm not going to test it every day. I'm just not. I love the auto testers for the parameters I care about. So it's, you know, it's just, you got to enjoy the tank.
So speaking of auto testers, did you get a Neptune test unit?
I am allowed to say yes.
How has that been working?
Out of the box, it's been pretty great. I got so far, yeah, I think that's all I'm allowed to say.
Okay.
And if
So
and if,
it's a
and if,
thumbs
and
up
if,
so far?
yeah, and if there was something negative about it, which I'm not allowed to say, I
Yeah.
wouldn't be saying anything about it.
Neptune is great. They're awesome. Or Apex is great.
Apex is fine. Apex has got a lot of things that I would like it to do better. And a lot of things that would make it better. But I've realized that I don't want to spend time bemoaning what isn't. You know, I want to spend time maximizing what we have. And so for me, something like that is, you know, I think you're nuts if you use Wi-Fi for your Apex. We know that's a potential problem. We know Wi-Fi is always a potential problem, even though because I'm in this room, I'm on Wi-Fi with you right now, and it seems to be working. Don't tell Mark Levinson that. But you know, so yeah. Again, I forgot what I was talking about. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, like,
oh, so plug your Neptune, plug your app, get a cord, get an Ethernet cord for your Apex, and then you never ever have to worry about it disconnecting from Wi-Fi. You're done. I never think about that.
I had the cord and then I moved the Wi-Fi hotspot right next to it, so I don't have to worry about it now.
Yeah, I tried that
the
too.
The water does screwy things with Wi-Fi signals.
Yeah, behind here, I would have, to make that work, I had to put a mesh extender or a mesh unit behind the tank, but then I had to put one on the other side of the wall in the kitchen because the tank was stopping it from hitting this one that's in this room over here. So I just wired it. I just buy your house and drill holes in all the walls and you'll be done.
So now Paul's got to pitch the GHL.
Oh,
I'm not pitching anything. I just responded to a chat
Keith
comment that said GHL for the win.
I think they're all great. I'm so uninterested in the controller wars. It's, you know, they're all great. If there was a unit that did something that wasn't expensive that I thought was interesting, I would try them. You know what I mean? But they're just kind of like they're all kind of doing the same thing. I'm kind of interested in the Maven because I'd like to see what Hydros is like, but we'll have to see when that comes out. And I'd like to test it against the other two auto testers I have in here. But you know, it all kind of works. Whatever. It's like it's like, you know, Apple versus PC. You know, I learned on Apple, so when you try to make me a PC, my head explodes. It's like, this is a weird language, and you've got to convince me that. Go ahead.
I think if you have kids, you need to have some type of controller. Let's just put it that way.
Okay. Well,
kids is a must.
I'm the laziest, and the reason I have a controller is because it makes me able to do the part I enjoy more. Now that's only like that because I spent so many years incrementally adding to the controller universe, right? If I came in and like tried to do all the controller stuff at once, I would explode. There's too many little details. It's if you're starting reefing and a controller at the same time, you're insane, in my opinion. You're learning two crazy things that need all kinds of details at the same time. So whatever works for you, I think in the controller world, you should use.
So to parlay on just a little bit of information that you were just touching on, here's a question to the topics. Marketing versus reality. Does expensive gear make reefing easier and more fun, or just the opposite?
Well, I think it's just the opposite because all the power head I use, all Jabo, every single one of them. So I used to have Ecotech, the MP40, MP10. So because I'm not sponsored by anybody, so I'm freely can criticize anybody. That's the way I look at it. Well, there is a more problem. Well, basically, when people are talking about the equipment, we're looking at two spectrum. One is the Ecotech is the most expensive, almost. On the top there, we are not talking about those specialty equipment, German make, that's several $1,000 pump. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the regular hobbyist stuff. So I used to have Ecotech MP10, MP40. I think it has more trouble than our cheapo Jabo. Well, because the thing is that I think this hobby is driven by so many money-making scam. No, scheme, not scam. Well, some of them are scam. But the
But
thing is
most of them are schemes, and I think
Yeah,
that's a
schemes.
really important distinction. No, most people are not trying to scam us; they are trying to make money from us, which is
Yes.
fine. Yeah, please
Yep.
go on. I'm sorry to jump in.
Okay. So what happened is that first we look at the cost. The cost is that a Jabo powerhead, for example, like that guy over there, he pushed almost the same amount, actually a little bit more than MP40. The cost $69. I can, for example, if I spend $400 for MP40, and well, it may last longer, right? But actually, I found out those things are pretty reliable. Let's assuming every year I toss one Jabo out. Well, I probably still ahead of the game in terms of cost. Second thing is that do they really make that much difference in terms of moving the water in your tank? I don't think so, because that actually I think the Jabo is that our cheapo thing is easier because you walk up to the controller, you push a button, you change everything. You can dial in the rotator dial there, and you change the wave, the timing. You don't have to whip up your phone, log into your program, and then try to find out which icon connect to which pump. And then I don't think it's really necessary. You take the fun part out of the hobby. Of course, that part of the some certain hobbyist is really into the gear, but that is an entirely different hobby. I'm talking about the hobbyist actually really into coral. So the thing is that you spend all this money, do you get better result of a coral? I can tell you probably not. So basically that is not really a factor. Of course, that if you go to AliExpress and buy a $10 powerhead, you're screwing yourself. So because that the reliability thing, but the thing is that you really don't have to spend that much money and to get an enjoyable hobby to feed the to make sure the coral get what they want. It doesn't really need to be that complicated. I think that I know a guy. He has a group of the MP powerhead, and he can make some fancy programming with the pump turn on different time and different mode, and he can even just like those swimming pool, they can use pump to make a flower or something like that in the pool, those kind of things. He'd be able to do that. But then I asked him that, is your coral really benefit from that? Well, you look at his tank, look at my tank, probably not. So that's the one thing is that in terms of water movement, I do not think that in reality, the expensive one versus the inexpensive one, as long as they're good quality, well tested, makes such a big difference. It doesn't. It's actually quite reliable these days. Back then, like 10 to 15 years ago, Jabo is really unreliable. But these days, it's as reliable as the other. For example, if you look at AI Nero, what exactly is AI Nero? It's basically, the funny thing is that, you correct me if I'm wrong. I saw the Jabo powerhead, those SLW series, little pancake, before the Nero even appeared. And also, the funny part is that I can, at the early days, I can take a Jabo powerhead propeller, tuck into the Nero. I can take the Nero propeller, tuck into the Jabo. That basically is the same thing. So, and one of the criticism I heard online is that, oh, Jabo copied this, copy that. Oh, I'm not sponsored by Jabo. I have no relationship with them. But the thing is that it's not always that inexpensive company copy the expensive company. No, most of the time it's the other way around. So what exactly is the difference in terms of price? Why do you spend money on a $400 powerhead versus a $69 powerhead? I think that mostly is how much money the company make. And also this another thing, some people tell me, oh, the prestige. I said, what are you talking about? What prestige? What? No, there's no prestige for anybody. For this, it's not like Mercedes-Benz versus a Hyundai. No, it's not. Then your Ecotech do not have prestige. Just basically just like that. So you can have all your fancy Radeon, everything over there. And then you show me, oh yeah, you have all this. Oh wow, I think this is good equipment. No, but the thing is that for the money that you pay, I probably won't pay that. Well, it's good equipment. There's no question asked. But how much do you pay? Yeah, well, probably I can do much less than that and get the even better result than you do. Because, well, why I'm saying that is that, like, look at the Radeon. So I have seen so many customers burn their coral because the XR30. The reason is that they walk into a local fish store and the fish store owner said, buy this. Why they buy this? Because there's no profit by selling anything else, like the Jabo. Yeah, Jabo do have an LED, but zero profit for anybody to sell those. They try to sell you a Radeon. And then you put your Radeon 180-watt light, you turn it on, wow, the coral dead or burn up. Well, versus a rebreather, the same length, 24-inch rebreather is 140 watt. You can turn the thing up to 100%, you won't burn your coral. But for this XR30, 180 watt, you turn it up, you can see your multi-digit start to die. Your multi-cap die. I see so many, even just yesterday. Then the problem that I tell one guy is that it's too much light, just too much light. So basically, the thing is that you can buy the par, the king of the par, you pay money for it. But your king of the par, kill your coral if you are not really understand how to use it. So that is why I like the Alchipo T5.
No.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
that's
you nailed. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, it's.
No.
I think. Oh, who's going?
Sorry. That's what I was gonna say. T5s are the way to go. Like you can just blast them and they'll still live.
Yeah, I think the way to go is by using equipment that is appropriate for your experience level,
Yes.
or using it within your experience level. I think what happens with expensive, we did say expensive, but marketing versus reality is the marketing is this gear will do everything I need it to do and will make my life easier. And the reality is it will only do that if you know how to use it and you have a need for it. So I love me a controller, and I love me everything to work in that ecosystem, because the reason I really have a controller, there's two now, but the first one was because I leave the tank for 2 or 3 weeks at a time regularly, for work or whatever. And having the controller and being able to be, on an island in the South Pacific with Wi-Fi and being able to stop my tank from dying by pressing a few buttons has been incredibly, incredibly useful to me. It's also been really useful to be on the phone with a tank sitter instead of and go, let me switch this on and off. Tell me if that pump is running or not. That's been really useful. But and then for coral spawning, it was kind of critical at this point that the amount of work that you would need to do on your own, changing things every day, would make you insane and you wouldn't want to do it. But now the computer does it all. So those are the two reasons I like it. I also like it for emergency planning, power outages or earthquakes. I have a battery system for the tank. If the power goes out, I'm good for at least 10 hours. And in California, when we get rolling blackouts, that can be a real thing. But if I had one tank, all of that would be all much smaller and much easier to use. If you're a gearhead, then this is a great gearhead hobby, and the life in the tank is secondary to the hobby you really love, and that's fine. I can't help but connect it to all the other hobbies, right? Bass playing. When you're learning music, you buy all kinds of gear because it'll make you a better player. It won't. What'll make you a better player? Play more. You know,
Mm.
kite surfing, the same kind of thing. You're at the beginning, you're searching for the gear that's going to make you better, that's going to click and make everything work easier. And it's you, you know, you have to just learn the gear that you're doing it, and then you'll be better. There's no magic answer. So, I think expensive gear is fine if you like expensive gear. And I think going complete budget and doing it cheap is great. When you were talking about when Jabo first hit the market, it was like, I was like, well, I have Ecotech pump and I have a Jabo pump. Okay. They kind of both lasted a year and a half-ish. It was like, well, if I'm going to replace them and they last the same amount of time, I'm kind of excited about the one that costs a third of the price than the one that's super expensive. Also, though, with the Ecotech stuff, because I don't see color well, pressing the buttons with the different color LEDs for programming, it doesn't, it makes the user experience unfun for me. But that's because I've got mutant eyeballs.
I think that yeah, I think you got very good points about that. In terms of controller, I think that if anybody need to travel, a controller is a must. And actually, the controller, I don't think the controller should be classified as the expensive versus inexpensive, because there is really not that many options there. You got a GHL, you got the Newton system, the Apex, and you got the Hydro. So they're all pretty similar in terms of the price bracket.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're all useful equipment. Actually, I think that they're very useful for people who doing maintenance of other people's tank. The reason for that is that you can have a real-time monitoring what's going on. I think that's very important. So in terms of controller, I think that is on its own category.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
Gotcha.
So but sometimes that I do have experience about that. The expensive Ecotech MP pump may not be better than a Jabo, from my personal experience.
No, yeah,
So,
I think the important part about pumps is, I think instead of looking at what is the best pump, whatever the best means, you need to look at the flow characteristics of each pump. By the way, I'm a flow nut. I love flow. I like my flow to change all throughout the day. I think it's critical. I think it's important, but I don't think you have to be as crazy as I am with it. I enjoy it, which is why I keep doing it, right? If I didn't enjoy it, it'd be like a heater and I would just run it and I would never do anything with it. But each pump, every pump has got a different flow characteristic, right? The wave, if I'm remembering this correctly, the wave is got a wide plume, and the Ecotech's got a more condensed plume. I may have those back and forth. I haven't had an Ecotech running in a while. The Seachays have a different plume and a different form factor. The puck, you know, I've got gyres up here because you don't see them, and it gets me really wonderful flow across the top of the tank. But they're on the Euro brace, so they're in the tank at the top and they just vanish to your eye. So it's less about which pump is better and more about which pump does what you want it to do in your tank, in my opinion. And in different spots in the tank, I've got different pumps because they're all doing something different, you know?
I think, I think that you nail it. That this is exactly the point. So so I have all sorts of different kind of pump, and just make sure that you got the job done. But one thing I want to point out is that sometimes you pay a lot of money, you're actually getting worse product. So one time I asked one of the overseas manufacturer, since the MP Ecotech pump has no patent, seriously, no matter what they tell you, the patent invalidated. So why nobody copy it? Yeah, why? And the answer is actually kind of surprising. So there are some design issue with this kind of pump. So, for example, the big gigantic, the west side, the big magnet, that's very expensive. That piece of big magnet, and that magnet is rubbed against the plastic back plate, and that is why that I think Ecotech is recommending people replacing the west side frequently, like 13 months, 14 months, something like that. That is because I have seen many of this the iron base that rotor basically all grind, have grooves on them, leaching heavy metal, and you take it out, you just rust it. You just do a 10-second Google search, a rusted MP10, MP40. You will see all this horror story. I experienced that too. That's one thing. It is a cost of manufacturing. Second thing is that it's a cooling of the motor. So that when you buy a brand new one, it's quiet, nice. Try to wait until you want down to maybe 1 or 2 years, and it started the dry side, the bearings start to wear out. That is because all the heat has nowhere to go. There's no heat thing, a fan to dissipate those heat. And for the regular power head, you submerge in the water. That's a cooling method to keep your bearing and the motor cool. So what happened is about this, the whole design issue is that you got more issue than is necessary to be a good pump. The another thing is that if you have I usually have a big Mexican turbo, it cool around and nudge the west side a little bit, it misaligned, and then you hear a motor grinding, and then the ceramic shoes started going out. So all this kind of thing, all this magnetic coupling thing, first of all, is it necessary? I see that it introduced more problem than benefit of the hobby. It's unique, it's cute, it looks good, right? It looks fancy. And the idea about keeping the power cord outside of the water, I think that really is a moot point. I think the only power head is that have the power cord, the motor outside the tank is Ecotech. And then the how many times you see that a DC pump will fail, the motor fell inside the water and fry your tank. So even you leak electricity, 24 volts, so what? But when you compare to a grind down wet side, the magnet, that neodymium, whatever it's saying, and start polluting your tank, it's true. I've seen many cases of that throughout the year. Yes, because of the wet side causing the heavy metal poisoning to your coral because it's grinding down, especially happening on a smaller tank. Like MP10 with a nano tank, that's very often. And every single time, the problem resolved by changing the wet side or completely replace it with another pump. So this is one thing is that why nobody copy it? Why it's so expensive? Because it's expensive to manufacture. They have a design flaw there. That's why I don't use it. I won't even recommend people using it.
Yeah.
So that is, go ahead.
Every pump has its place. You know, before I had this tank, which has got this side panel is viewable. I don't know if that's seeable. Well, I don't want to mess with this because I'll unplug something. But I used to have an MP40 on the side of this, and it made me insane because the dry side was sticking out 3 or 4 inches or whatever it was on this wall, and it always bugged my eye. So as soon as there was a pump that pushed the same amount of water that didn't do that, I was thrilled. And, you know, some people, you know, the MP60 is a great pump, but what was I going to say? That every piece of equipment has its own eccentricities, right? So you just got to know what those are and how to stay ahead of them. Just like we were talking about with the Ethernet or Wi-Fi for an Apex. It's just like, you know, just Ethernet it, and then you don't have to worry about it. If you have, you know, any other, you know, if you have a pump that's got a consumable part because of the design, you have to, you know, have a spare on hand and inspect it regularly because things are going to happen. So, you know, again, I think it's people get too hung up on. It's weird to me to think that this became a gearhead hobby. because it's. But I guess at the same time, people have really fancy, beautiful cars that they never drive. So I guess it's not the weirdest thing in the world. So, and I don't want to yuck anybody's yum if you're all over, but at the same time, I don't want those people to yuck other people's yums because of what they're choosing to do.
Yeah.
It's there is no best, there is no fight, there is no war. There's just different and whatever you decide. They all work. You can have a nice tank with all of it, but I think what happened was we got a lot of vendors producing content. And when vendors produce content, they're understandably trying to sell stuff. So that content is always skewed some percentage to make you want to buy it. They might be giving you good information, but they want you to buy the product. Otherwise, they wouldn't be putting the resources into making these videos. So it gets a little weird when our market was kind of taken over by companies making informational videos and articles kind of stopped getting read. It all became videos, but they're trying to sell you a product. And
I think you got a good point about this, because the thing about this way, I always find out that it's so strange for some company making video disguise themselves as educational, but actually it's an infomercial. But sometimes those information are wrong. Let me give you one example. I think that several years ago, maybe not that long ago, I saw a video. It pops up on YouTube as a recommendation. Is that we finally found the problem to solving the algae problem. That video probably is still there. Okay, you can Google it. Well, in that video, it tells you feed frozen food, not pellets. The reason for that is that all the flakes and pellets is so packs too much nutrition. So the frozen food contain less nutrition. You should feed more commercial frozen food. I think this is ridiculous. I think you go down to the whole is shameful. Well, the thing is that if I was on your show, I would give you several F-bomb on that thing. But this is the thing. This is the kind of so-called educational video. It's disguised as that. So, but many people take it as it is. Even just last week, I have one customer telling me about this, why he only feed frozen food, but not feeding pellets and other things. And he has tons of algae problem. And then the thing is, well, because that this just because of the video, it was just last week, even though the video was put out many years ago. So you can see this lasting impact of this misguided, actually disguised as informational, educational, but actually underneath is commercial. And for example, I find it's really weird for some company doing that. The thing is that you don't see a Toyota get on the air and say, wow, our Toyota is the best, and that Honda's a piece of something. So, well, because if you're a Toyota dealer, and you probably shouldn't go on the YouTube and give you educational video about how good Toyota is. And that's the only thing you should buy. So this is kind of, actually, funny thing is that in other countries, this is actually illegal. Yeah, but doing this kind of promotion disguised as commercial as information educational, it actually is illegal. But in US, it's perfectly fine. I think this is kind of strange. But another thing is that I think this kind of, and also that you can find that the video actually sometimes that they contradict themselves. Okay, you can pull out one video maybe 1 year ago after another year. Depends on what product people are selling. They just put out a different video. They're contradicting each other themselves. Depends all based on what product they're trying to sell. So I think that there's a mentality for the people in this hobby. Seems like all loaded with money because it's an expensive hobby. It gives an impression or maybe an imagination like all these reef hobbyists is all gullible, easy to fool, with loaded with all sorts of money. So basically, you treat it like it's kind of very strange about it. Well, yeah, it happened to all the hobby, all the fields that making a buck, perfectly great. If you don't make money, you go starve. Your family has nothing on your dinner table. But there's always a limit. There's always a limit of how far you can push something to try to sell your product. There's always that, but also there's a loophole here. In this hobby, is not regulated by government agency, just like your aqua equalizer, right? So basically, there is another thing, Vibrant. You still can buy from Amazon. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
And then you still have the same label of bacterial product.
So I see the next question: how to tell apart marketing versus practical advice. How do you separate the signal from the noise? That's really hard.
Very difficult.
I guess the short answer that I give to that is find a couple people who have tanks that you like, and then listen to them for a while. You know, and because that's what you're trying to make a tank that looks like that one instead of a good tank, because I don't know what that means. And then kind of figure out what that is, and then you can start listening. Like, I just got a new camera, so I'm listening. I'm watching some videos about how to make that work. And, you know, within 4 videos, it was like, oh, okay, I'm not going to really learn anything from most of these other videos. I might get like one tidbit here and there, but everyone's covering the same thing, who are reviewing and talking about the camera and the software. So it becomes like, well, it's a nice reminder to stop listening to videos and start doing the hobby you actually, the hobby you're actually in. Start doing it and see what it's like.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely just like the camera thing. So I'm into photography too. So if you look at people, Leica is a beautiful German camera. So expensive. Does Leica actually take better picture than the Panasonic counterpart? Maybe not. But then if you look at all these YouTubes saying, if you don't own a Leica, you don't even deserve to be a photographer. It's this kind of thing.
So it's so dumb. Remember when RAW came out and everyone was like, a real photographer is not going to shoot in RAW. And I went, are you kidding? The end product is what matters. I don't care if it came out of the camera pure. You know, if this allows me to save a picture after the fact, you know, in post, I want that. And, you know, it's the same with the tank. I don't care about pure reef keeping, whatever that may be. I want the tank to look nice and I want to enjoy it. Because if I'm not enjoying it, what's the point?
Absolutely, because this is a hobby. By the end of the day, it is a hobby. So if is so much labor, so much money, go in there, only give a headache, why?
Yeah.
So so I think that to enjoy the hobby is keep everything really simple. Actually, it works too. Especially what you said is that when you look at the information get presented online or on the forums, YouTube video, is look at that person's the reef tank. Show me the tank. Show me the coral. The thing is that if you want to preach something, you better have something to show for. Just like when I look at the screen, you have the beautiful reef tank at the back. That's why what you said is valuable. So, but online, so I remember there's a guy online actually start to give a lot of advice, all this kind of saying, but the guy doesn't even have a reef tank. He's just repeating whatever he heard.
Right.
And then keep repeating and make YouTube video out of it too. But what's the point? So then people will actually fall into the rabbit hole and spending money. Oh, you need this magical potion. This is the link. And then, oh, it works great. But then the thing is that guy doesn't even have a reef tank. He's just repeating. But then the thing is that actually people make money out of that. So and especially if you have a YouTube channel, Of course, that depends on how many subscriber, what kind of traffic, what kind of yeah, those it actually turn into money. So there is it's very difficult to figure out online, like on the reef to reef, when people start saying things. They better actually, I think they should have a requirement. Post the picture of your tank, not something that you grab from the YouTube or online or Google. Post the photo of your coral, your tank before you give your advice. That means that your advice is actually meaningful. So there's another thing is that remember that the AI, the Aqua Illumination or the program, the sawtooth program, you see a lot of that. Yeah. That many years ago, I actually sent a message to the guy who is proposed. Actually, either he's inventing this kind of sawtooth program, or he's the big proponent for it. That broadcasting, or how good this thing is, even give it called the breathing period or something fancy name. So I asked him, how do you come up with this kind of jagged edge? Then he sent me a scientific paper. The paper, if I remember correctly, is using a par meter to measure the par on a tidal pool. The pool is pretty calm, so then they measure the time point, 24-hour time point. And of course, you know that the data is like this, right? The data is up and down, up and down. And then in that paper, the author actually just make a smooth curve, because it's very simple that scientific wise, when you collect data, there's error, the instrumental error. So then you do a smooth curve of that. But then the guy told me, no, those people are wrong. What they should do is just connecting all the dots. When you're connecting all the dots, you get all the jagged edge. That's how he based on this paper to have this jagged edge AI program. And then he make it on the internet, become so famous. I see people that keep using those jagged edge program. It become, even on AI's website itself, they also have those kind of things. Then I tell him that, well, maybe that you should look at the paper, just like what the authors, what they did is just do a curve fit, a smooth curve. That's what it's supposed to do, instead of just connecting all the dots. Guess what he sent me? He said he got a bachelor's degree in science, and I'm a bullshit. I told him I got a PhD, and then he disappeared. So that is a lot of things is that I remember there's some historical figure, not on the good side, the evil side. He said, if you repeat a lie 3 times, it become a truth.
Oh, for sure.
Oh yeah. So basically, if you post some bogus stuff 3 times on the internet, it becomes truth. That is the problem about when hobbyists get into the hobby. They get bombarded with all this information. They cannot tell. They cannot tell what is actually real, what is actually a bunch of lies, and even worse, what are disguised commercial trying to sell you something. So that is a major issue about online community. So that's why I said, well, when people giving advice, probably it should be mandatory to post a photo of their reef tank to make sure they really actually have a reef tank to begin with. And second thing, they actually are successful. So that's why I like local. And then I can go to a guy's house and look at his tank. Oh yeah, it looks great. And then whatever advice I can learn from him, I feel comfortable. That because it does have something to show for it. So that's why I don't listen to people just babbling online, repeating things.
I'm much more a fan of smaller communities now, because I think the bigger online communities, there's just no way to know what's going on, you know. Yep. And you'll see if somebody asks a question on one of the big forums, they'll get every answer and they'll all contradict each other, and it's I don't even know what to do for people anymore. So
do you guys feel there's room to improve for LEDs as a lighting method?
Rich, you go first.
I think there's room for everything to improve. I'm not sure what direction the improvement would be. But they seem to work pretty good. You know, so I don't know. I'd like there to be some standards. That would be really great, and then we could all be on the same page rather than kind of everyone independently testing against each other all the time. But you know, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. What do you guys think? What how would an LED improve? I mean,
Actually, I did work with some LED manufacturer because by then, that's several years ago, I want to make my own LED brand. So I think that all the major LED manufacturers sort of already come to a standard because that if you look at all of most of them, they're all using the same diodes, the same bulbs, the quick LED, semi, OSRAM. Basically, it's a standard. All the bulbs is the same. It's just that the form factor is different. The software is different. I think that is the only difference there among most of the premium LED brand on the market. And they already come to the standard. And now that there's the next improvement is waiting for the LED diode manufacturer, because that the software, controlling software these days is pretty perfected. It's pretty good. And all the major brands, they have all the good software and they work more or less similar. And there's plenty of example over the years proving LED just works. And actually, funny thing is that, and let me tell you this, that this LED that is a 15 years old mass spec razor, and the diode in it, guess what? Is not much different than today's Radeon G6. Yeah, so that's basically until the LED chip manufacturers come up with new things, more efficient. Well, there's room to improve because LED is not these days. Actually, current generation is really not as power efficient as we thought they are, because that the power efficiency of the low power LED chip are very good, but those are not the LED chip in all our Radeon, AI, Rebooter. No, they're all high power LED. So the power consumption is really still pretty high. It's not that green at all. So, but then down the road now, there's a newer generation LED. They're actually using UV. Right now, all these LED are using blue LED shining on phosphor to generate the broader spectrum light. But the more efficient UV LED, eventually it's going to come to the cheap enough to come to the market. And now we're probably seeing that instead of 180 watt LED on 24-inch form factor, we're probably talking about like 60 watt LED, but put out a similar amount of light in terms of efficiency. I think that the improvement of efficiency that is in the foreseeable future, we can see it. But in terms of spectrum, I don't think there's really that much difference between different brands of LED. All the premium LED, the spectrum basically the same because they're adjustable. You can tune to each one to each other. That brings down to the all this metal halide thing. So is metal halide really closer to the sun? Absolutely not. All the LED, all the lighting method in this hobby is far, far away from the natural sun spectrum. 10-second Google, you will tell. None of them is actually even closer to the natural sunlight. But it has been proven the current spectrum, like the so-called AB Plus program. So AB Plus program is nothing special. It just basically dial down your red, green, and white and make your blue, violet higher, that kind of thing. Well, they basically all boil down to that spectrum. It works just fine. And do we missing UV? I don't know. That's another can of worm. Does the metal halide more superior than LED? I don't think so. I think they're comparable. Only the metal halide is a fire hazard. So the more and more study that shows that, well, the current generation LED as the spectrum we have so far, it does pretty good on our coral these days. So I think that the improvement down the road is about the better efficiency. That's my take of it.
Yeah.
And that actually makes a big difference in terms of power consumption. I will see my electricity bill with every month I receive my electricity bill is, oh my God, oh no, even with mostly LED and T5. So I think the efficiency can really improve on that one.
Cool. Couple other quick questions for you guys. Do you guys think that our reef tanks mimic the ocean or a completely different ecosystem?
You get to go first this time.
Okay, all right. I think it's absolutely different. So it's not even close to the ocean. First of all, that in the ocean, there is a big difference between aquaculture coral and wild coral. And according to a paper published by University of Miami, if I remember correctly, it called assisted evolution. So basically, the aquaculture coral is able to utilize photosynthesis as their primary food source. While in the ocean, even SPS, they heavily rely on capturing plankton. So basically, in the coral itself, aquaculture coral versus wild coral, they're actually quite different in terms of how they be able to utilize energy. So just with that, for the coral perspective, reef tank is absolutely different than the ocean. But now here comes the interesting question. It's about what happened about all this aqua coral that transplant back to the ocean. So this effort has been going on for like 2-3 decades. And so from what I learned, is probably less successful than what people expected. It's because our aquaculture coral go back to the ocean, they die. So
Well, there's a weird part to that I think you have to add in there. Is most of the replanting, most of the outplanting of corals has been on reefs that are degraded. So, it's if the corals were going to do well there, they would be growing there because that's where they're from. So if you're taking the coral that's growing well in a coral nursery, whether it's on a tree or if it's on land, and then you put it back to a place where corals don't live very well anymore, thinking that they're going to make it is a little bit crazy to me. It's kind of a backwards thing. If they survived, they would be surviving and we wouldn't have to be replanting them. I've been to a couple outplant sites, one in the Virgin Islands that was doing really well after 5 years. But a lot of what we see is Caribbean and Florida replants. And I think you got to look squintily at that because you're putting them into a place, you're putting them out on a place where corals naturally are not doing well. So I don't think it's fair to expect them to live out there once they're replanted out there, because there's something going on that's detrimental to them.
That's a very good point. Yeah, thank you. Actually, I never think about that before. Yeah. So in terms of the biological environment, like the bacterial of the reef tank, it's very difficult to duplicate what's in the ocean. So I think, well, I remember many years ago, there is an open letter from a marine biologist and to the reefing community. So the point what he's trying to say is that in the ocean, there's so much food being the coral receiving so much live plankton as food source, and photosynthesis actually is supplemental. So versus what's in our tank, photosynthesis actually is a primary, and then the feeding, we have a much less biodiversity in a reef tank. Actually, there's a study done on that many years ago as well. So they take, if I remember correctly, is that they take the tank water from those tank of the month, Reef Central, that kind of thing. Those are well-established, beautiful SPS, mostly SPS packed reef tank. They take their water and analyze the bacterial content and also as well as the organic content in those water. I remember that that study shows that we only have 10% of the organic and plankton content versus the ocean. But those reef tanks are thriving, are beautiful, just like what Keith has, that the tank of the month, beautiful. And so the coral be able to thrive at that kind of environment. But that study just already shows the reef tank. I'm not talking about a very crappy, poor reef tank, but it's a thriving, packed with SPS reef tanks. The biological environment actually is significantly different from the ocean. So the coral basically adapted. That's why we call that become aquaculture coral, adapted to this kind of environment, because coral actually is a highly adaptive species. So it's very difficult to reduplicate what the ocean can offer to the coral in the ocean, because that if we try to duplicate the amount of plankton that the ocean offer to the coral on the reef, and our tank become foul at no time. That amount of organic, that amount of food, especially live food, flush through the system, unless that you're on a reef and pumping reef water in your tank and then do just 24/7, that probably is a different story. But so what I'm saying is that we do see so many countless successful, beautiful coral packed reef tank in this hobby. And then all these tank environments are so dramatically different from the ocean. So my conclusion is that what we have in a reef tank actually is not even a mimic of the ocean. The coral basically adapt to what we have in this hobby. What they adapt to a captive environment. For example, like the dogs and cats. So they adapted to the house, and you get your dog outside, and then so then the homeless dog, they live a very poor life. So that's what I'm trying to say is that it's different. The aquaculture coral in the captive environment is significantly different from the ocean, and also that we don't have to mimic what the ocean, and we cannot mimic the ocean to provide the coral that kind of environment, because just physically impossible. And another thing is that may explain that's why so many wild SPS, they basically just doesn't last for a long time in a captive environment when they cannot adapt to the captive environment. So that's my because I did do a tally of 10 years of purchase of wild SPS colony from reputable vendors. In a 10-year period, how many I follow them to see how long they live. They live about 6 months to a year, and that's it, and they perish. So, but then within this time frame, and whatever coral, the branches, the tips that grow in the tank, I clip them off, they become aquaculture coral, and those offspring that is living this day, but not the original mother colony. So so that's why I'm saying that. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, that wasn't me. But I can jump in. I think they're a similar ecosystem, but they're not the same. I think that the natural environment is a great place to inform direction in your tank at home. But mimicking it, I mean, I think the simple answer is you can't. You just kind of can't. You can approximate some of it, but it's not really the same. It's more of the mimicking is, well, also, a tank like this, these corals don't occur together. Our tanks just kind of aren't natural, but you can look to nature to inform what you do. I have my flow changes throughout the day because I like to have like the tidal changes that we see in nature. And I just like them, whether they're beneficial or not. I can't even tell you that, but I can tell you they make me happy, and my corals seem to do just fine. And I get flow everywhere. So it goes, it goes one direction for 4 hours, then they overlap for a little while, then it goes another direction, and then it changes direction again, except it's a different type of flow. It may be more wavy. So we get the four, the slack tide and the incoming tide and the I can't remember, my brain just fried. The incoming tide and the outgoing tide and the slack tides both at high and low. So you get different activity, and you get fishes doing different things in the different activity. Some of the fish like to eat the algae off the rocks where it's blowing really fast, but some other areas they won't go to unless the current's low. So that's informed, our light cycles are kind of informed, but you can certainly do more light than, 10 or 12 hours. The spawning stuff is the same thing. It's informed. When Jamie first did it, Jamie Craggs, and then when we first did it, one of the big questions was, what do we need to do for the moonlight? And so when Jamie did it for the first time, he took the blue LEDs out of the lunar simulation module. He put white LEDs in, and then he put layers of ping pong ball on top of it to make the light to be more approximate to what it actually is out on the reef. Right?
Actually, that is a good question. So
I can answer it.
I think that the blue LED moonlight versus the white LED moonlight. So I think that's because that when we talk about moonlight in this hobby, we always think about the blue.
Yeah, it's not blue, it's white.
Yeah, it's white.
But as it turns out, just within the 3 years between when Jamie started and then I started, he said, "Oh, the blue will be fine. I think the blue will be just fine. It doesn't matter." And I said, "What about the amount?" And he goes, "It doesn't really matter so much either." So just like we're seeing in the calcium and in what I expect we're going to see in all the trace elements is there's a large slop area. It's the same thing with all of it. There's just a large slop. So use nature to guide your thinking because that's how they evolved, but it doesn't have to limit it to it. So there.
That is very interesting because that the nature may not be actually the only way that the coral can thrive. And for matter of fact, that actually nature may not be the best.
Well, nature's not static at all, right?
Yeah.
So we want stable tanks, but the actual profile that I'm using for the Great Barrier Reef for coral spawning, my tanks, actually the tanks in the other room are doing it now, but in the winter, in the other room, it's winter in my tank. The tanks are getting down to 74, 75 degrees because that's what happens. So that's the dip that we currently think is needed to promote gametogenesis so they'll be able to spawn when they're supposed to spawn. But, it also gets up to 84, 85 in the summer months. And so I've, almost immediately I went, there is no way we're doing that. And I shrunk it to 76 on the cold side and 81 on the hot side. And, we've had spawns doing that since 2019. So I think the slop effect, I think nature is a great place when you have no other information to look to for inspiration and direction. And then you can start messing with it and seeing what happens.
So in terms of the temperature thing, I want to get your opinion about that because I was told, and then by a marine biologist, and in the ocean, because that there's so much of water movement, when the water temperature is, for example, like 84 degrees, the coral's temperature also 84 degrees. But in a reef tank, because that we don't have such a huge movement compared to the ocean, the coral actually is several degrees hotter than the environment.
I've never heard that. I don't know. I can't speak to that. I can see. I can immediately argue both directions for that in my head, but it's based on just thoughts rather than data. I think that'd be really hard. I think because the cell, I'm not even going to say anything. I don't know is the right answer. That is the exact right answer. I have no clue.
Yeah.
But I was going to say the natural environment for these corals is also not static. So for the longest time, we were trying to keep our tanks stable all the time because we noticed through a million monkeys playing with things that when corals get unstable in temperature, things seem to happen, right? Weird things seem to happen. But I think now we're getting a better handle on what stable actually means. And we understand that temperature cycles and light cycles can change, and it's not, it's not going to kill anything. My tank I'm running alkalinity now at like, I want it to be between 8 and 9. So it's like 8.5-ish, right? I can actually tell you what it is because I'm here and you guys might care. It is 8.8 right now. And my nitrate is 8.8 and my PO4 is 0.6. And my calcium is 428, and my magnesium is 1302. I never look at those other two. I don't care at all. Unless they're crazy. But my alk can drop from, 8.5 if I missed refilling the calcium reactor or the Kalkwasser bin, it can drop into the 7.4s, 7.5s. And in the past, that used to make me, chicken little and scream and try to fix it immediately. And now I just go replace the cylinder or fill up the thing again. And, maybe I'll bump it if I'm feeling nervous, but then I'll go to sleep and then it'll be a little bit up the next day. And then by 2 or 3 days later, it's back up. Never see a blip. Had to go up to 10, didn't see a blip. So I think I maybe we're back to the, what we were talking about on getting an ICP result. Is the action you take based on a reading of your tank going to do more damage than just backing off and letting it kind of resolve itself? I think that's always an important thing to ask yourself. And most of the time, unless it's emergent, I came in here once and the pH was 10 and the water was white and the fish were all rolling around dying. So yeah, you should probably do something then. And what I did that case, by the way, is I just took the CO2 from my calcium reactor and ran a line of it into the tank and let the controller, without the controller, I would have lost everything. And the controller would just add CO2 when the pH got too high. And I just kind of rode that on the controller and brought it back down. As soon as the pH hit 8 or, 8.5 on the way down, the fish stopped rolling around and all recovered. The corals all died. You go to 10, your corals are probably going to make it a couple of days. All the SPS died. All the LPS did not die. So, if it's I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I think there is a huge window that the window is larger than what we were told to.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Then,
but it's only through experience and people reporting stuff, reporting mistakes, which some people don't like to do, that we get better. I think somebody else was asking something, and that might be nice to have a different voice talking for a minute.
I was just trying. I'm not trying to kick you guys off. I was just trying to go through the list without.
Yeah, and I got infinite time, but I want to be respectful of everyone else. So,
hey, I'll keep it going all night. It doesn't matter. Yeah. I know it was scheduled to end 1 minute ago, but I just advanced the time further, and it's still going. So I guess it worked out all right. But
swinging it. At some point, I have to go to the airport and pick up my wife, but that's not for several hours.
Let her take a cab. Tell her to call one of her friends. That's what they're there for, right?
No.
Yeah, that's why I'm single. But anyways, just to, keep going back and forth to like a topic list. I mean, I think we kind of all know the answer, but just to get you guys' opinions on it, are books outdated nowadays?
No, I think books are critical. I think it's impossible to get useful information from videos. I think it's so hard to, when I watch a video that's supposed to have information that I want, I have to watch it with a damn notebook, and I have to write down time codes and what they said, because otherwise the chunk of what I want is in the beginning 2 and the first minute of the video, and then at 5 minutes, and then at 7 minutes, and I can't really look at it all at once, and it makes me crazy. They don't even put significant figures up, right? So you don't get any graphs, you don't get any information. You just have to listen to what somebody's saying and try to actually pull that information out. articles and books are so great because the information is all there that you can absorb at your own pace. You can do this when you're reading a book or an article about tanks, you can do this. Huh. And then you go back and your eyes just go to a few lines before where you were and you absorb it better. With a video, I find it much harder. I was just bemoaning this to somebody. I think I've used bemoaning twice. If I use it a third time, everyone has to drink and I have to be quiet for 2 minutes. I was whining about this to somebody else because, it was about, what does adding ChemiClean do to the biome of your tank? ChemiClean is fine and will get rid of cyano, and that's great. I worry that when you bomb a tank with something like that, any of the tank bombs, maybe that'll catch on. We'll call them tank bombs from now on. You put them in, I think you're risking tweaking everything in your tank that you've worked so hard to stabilize, all your bacteria and your microfauna and your microbiome. And so the question was, hey, has anybody actually tested before and tested after, a week after, 2 weeks after, a month after, 2 months after, to see the difference in the stable biome of the tank? And somebody said, yeah, they have. It's in a video. And it's like, I can't go. How am I going to find that piece of information in a video? Where is the article that outlines all this stuff so we can all look at it and learn from it? The problem is that the hobby changes so fast that, you write an article, you have to revisit it again in 4 years. But that's what articles are for. Here's the information that I have at this particular moment. So I think books are not outdated, but I think it's going to be really problematic for people to publish books anymore. So that's why I kind of lumped it in with articles as well. I think we're going to get back to more articles, and what's the point of, why should I write a book except for a vanity project? It's just not going to be a thing in a year or two anyway. So I'm not quite sure. So I think written information of the tank is critical, and I wish we had more because it's useful. That's why we're in a dangerous place because people keep referencing peer-reviewed science papers, right? And they misquote those and pull things out of context and jump to conclusions based on what's in the paper that don't actually make it to our hobby. It doesn't, the authors will be so critical to go, this has only worked on this particular species of coral in this particular thing with what we did particularly. And a hobbyist will go, see, this was grown at this pH. So that's the pH we need. And it's like the author of the paper was very clear to say they're not saying anything like that at all. So anyway, the short answer is, I think we need more stuff written down because, and we need more figures because they're just way easier to look at and to parse and to get the information into your brain. The videos, we tend to ramble. How are you? This is a great conversation to listen to. I think I would enjoy this if it was somebody else besides me here, but it's hard to get. It's hard to get actionable information out of it on more of a technical subject. I'm babbling now, so I'll stop.
Back to articles. Are we going to see any more articles in Coral Magazine with Rich Ross?
We'll see. Coral Magazine. No, I'm dying.
That's a no.
Looks like his wife's stuck at the airport.
Yeah, right. I'm being killed through the ether. The door is open for me to write some articles, which I think is very nice. A Coral Magazine article is work. If I'm doing an article there, I really want to have all my ducks in a row. So it's a lot of effort, which I sometimes don't mind doing. That said, on another subject, it looks like we may be rebooting the Skeptical Reef Keeping series because Salem Clemens from Reef Builders is all excited to do it. In fact, we're supposed to have an article done by tonight, and it's not going to happen. I don't think either of us had the time over the weekend to do it, but that would excite me. I'm getting kind of excited. I know I just dished on the vapor awareness of video, but I'm also kind of excited about the kind of quick and dirty and not completely line by line gone through to make it perfect kind of reporting. And I'm not sure what the world is right now. So I don't really know what to do except to try to do whatever I think seems enjoyable and might be useful to other people.
Well, my take of that subject is that not only the books are not outdated, they're actually very useful. And also the information get presented is actually is still applicable today. The one of the reasons is that when many of these coral books, and we talk about in this hobby, when they were written, they're based on actual experience. They don't base on some, a pH theory, then this theory, that theory, and this testing, that testing. No, they are based on what actually being done as a hobby, or maybe as a coral farming. We are based on the reality the people actually has been experienced. So those information are absolutely valid. So even today, but these days, I have plenty of books. I still flip through them. I like to see that, well, what kind of theory of today that people get presented to, or people buying in versus like 20 years ago. The funny thing is that the fundamental didn't change at all. And then the funny thing is that during the years, many of these so-called interesting theory that pops up on the online, on the video, has been proven to be not really the truth, not really works, and you all revert back to what the book said. So I think that, and also when you publish a book, you do a lot of research.
Yeah.
Back then, I'm not talking about today. I don't know, today that people can write a book by doing whatever. But back then, in order to publish a book, you have to put your work in there. You actually, it's a different kind of environment, a different kind of ethics standard for a book, when books are very common. But these days, a video are more common. So on the video, and people can say whatever they want. But when you publish as a book, and people can, it's black and white on the paper. And so the author has something very important, is their reputation. And also back then, if you look at all these famous authors on the coral reef book, all of them are very reputable people. So they did their research, and they have their reputation to defend, to concern about. So those books actually, for example, like the books by Anthony Calvo, the coral farming book, I look at them today, is every single part is applicable. Yeah, there is not outdated at all. It actually contains more truthful information than what today's video presented to you. And today they say, oh, you have to keep the pH like this because they try to sell you a algae scrubber. But back then, when Calvo wrote his book, he has no motivation to sell you algae scrubber. Oh no, sorry, the CO2 scrubber. Sorry, CO2 scrubber. He has no motivation at that. So that is the thing, is that the way I look at books actually is very important, and also even more important is to preserve these books. For matter of fact, that the Boston Reefer used to have a library. I don't know what the library goes. So I think that not only we should think about the books and articles that written, published by reputable people are very useful, and also need to be preserved and need to be kept. So that is not only we need to pay attention to the books, and we also need to preserve them. Otherwise, the information goes just haywire. And now that it's much easier to go online to watch a video. And reading a book actually you have to put effort in to read a book. But when you listen to a video,
I agree with a couple of, well, maybe one or two caveats, because people who write books only really write the books in the hopes that a lot of people buy the book. So the book itself is what they're trying to sell, right? So there's still a transactional nature there. I think the difference is in a book, it's a lot harder to hide from some piece of crap that you say, or you can't get away with in a book or an article. It's harder to get away. You're gonna get called on it harder because it's way easier to know what you actually said. Like,
Yeah.
if YouTube wasn't doing what YouTube is doing with videos, if it was 10 or 15 years ago, and someone came up with that food, some of those people are taking dried food and cooking it and letting it ferment for a few days and then feeding it out or whatever. But there's no there's no way to track down any of that, right? I've whatever reservations I have about essentially taking a cup of rotting food with bacteria that you've left out overnight and then feeding it to your tank without knowing what's in it is, I do have some reservations about that, but I'm not gonna. It might be fine, but if that was written in an article, there's no way the article would have been written yet. It might have been a blog post that said, "Hey, maybe this will work. We're doing some more work." But now you can just kind of come out on an influencer show and drop a bomb and then run away and not have to support it, not have to, support your thesis, not have to support the claim you're making, not have to support anything. You can just say it and then see if people do it and what happens to their tanks. And I think I'm okay with people doing whatever they do, but it would be so great if the information was there. What's in one place rather than having to find 6 different videos to find out, what are they basing this idea on, and do they have any support for the claim? Does it really work or not? That's all. If you write it down, it's a little easier for people to look at. Of course, I guess I'm an old man now, and maybe I'm just yelling at the clouds, and people are having a great time with the videos and getting all the information they need and having bomber tanks and not having any problems. I don't think that's really the case, but that's okay. Now I'm just saying nothing and I'm not stopping. I'm still talking.
Oh, good. Yeah, Dong, at some point, probably 8 to 10 years ago, the library was expunged. We all know how hard it is to get people to volunteer to do things in the club. And whoever was handling the library didn't want to do it anymore. And there was no takers, so everything got auctioned off. I found that out.
Oh,
I found out that later because I donated probably like 20-something hardcover books. And when I was away from the club, I came back and I asked Anthony, and I says, where's all the books? And he's like, oh, they got auctioned off for pennies on the dollar. Like, the whole library was probably like 100 books and all kinds of video and, lectures and this and that, different Machner events. And I think it sold everything for like $30, It was like
oh my goodness.
insane, I was like,
Yeah.
woohoo. So it is what it is, unfortunately.
It is.
I'm trying to rebuild my collection of books. I got some stacked up over there. But
Yeah, I'm getting the feeling that we're gonna need to do a book digitization project. Because you've got books, I've got some books, Ben's got a bunch of books. Jason Langer has got more books than anyone should physically have. And all it's going to take is for one exploding cheese curd to get all over Jason's books, and then we'll have nothing left. So maybe we'll see some push in that direction from a few people. And if a few people do it, then it's pretty good. Yeah. Ben just texted me the Library of Alexandria burns again.
yeah. He also said to have someone wheel you back to the old age home while the old folks home.
Wheel me in front of a white wall and tell me I'm looking at a reef. I won't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at 15 different conversations right now.
Oh, it wasn't a text. It's on the YouTube.
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
all
I
good.
misspoke.
How do you guys feel about antibiotics, and is the hobby abusing them at this point?
Oh God.
That's like a 45-minute convo right there. My antibiotics consist of artificial salt and water.
Are we
What?
gonna talk about OA?
Yeah,
Oh, we could talk
Actually,
about
OA
it.
is
Good.
a different story. So actually, the just go on Chewy's website. You will see how the government respond to that. Since starting 2024 this year, Chewy no longer allowed to carry all this fish antibiotic.
Yeah.
That's what the government respond to that because the people are abusing it. And also another thing is really drive me crazy is that by looking at this KFC tip, oh my God. So try to imagine if you go to a doctor's office, you got a sore throat. The doctor prescribe you every single antibiotic known to man, then eat them all at the same time. That is not, well, basically it's several things. One thing is ignorant of science. So second thing is basically his attitude of, it's abusing antibiotic. So that is absolutely ridiculous. I just cannot believe. And
Well, it's even more it's even more ridiculous because there's no support for the claims. It's just
yeah.
I think antibiotics is an interesting question because I think we're absolutely abusing them. I think everyone in the world is abusing them. And I think the amount that we use in our hobby is dwarfed by what people pee into the environment every day. The question for me, this is an ethical thing, and you can shut me up anytime because I love this kind of stuff, but it becomes an ethical question more than a moral question because it feels like the moral, in my head, morals is more societal and ethical is more personal. Morally, we don't care about antibiotics as a culture. I mean, we try to, but we really don't. And what's happening now with what's happening to Chewy is because it's too hard to tell people they can't have antibiotics, we regulate all the little holes that we can because those are easier to regulate. But even though those aren't the problems. So the problem for me becomes ethically. Do I feel good about doing something negative to the environment that's probably a drop in the grander scheme bucket? Or do I feel bad because we shouldn't do it? It's just not a good thing to do irresponsibly. So I guess that's what it comes to too. What is responsible use of antibiotics is not using it when it's not needed, and disposing of it properly. So, but we've shown that we can't have nice things like that because, hell, when I first started working in fish stores back in 1910 or whenever it was, we had tetracycline for sale, in a blister pack, and we had a tub of it that was, of capsules sitting on the back shelf. And if somebody was feeling sick, you went and you ate some tetracycline, and you can't do it anymore because too many people ate too much tetracycline, and now it kind of don't work so good no more. So, Cipro, when I heard that people were using Cipro in their tanks, part of me went, well, I get it because it seems like it's the most effective. And I absolutely don't get it because I think it's probably way too effective and it's not needed for what we're doing. So I think and then I want to hear what Dong has to say. And then whatever somebody said something about OA, which I have a little experience with. So I can talk about me being a hypocrite.
Well, no, actually what I'm saying about OA versus Cipro is that because Cipro is still a human medicine. So Cipro is a little bit more potent than the OA. OA is basically retired human medicine. It's like a previous generation, older model of Cipro. So it's being used on a veterinary. Actually, the OA has been used so much in like the farming, like livestock, being used so much. It's so abused. So basically, that if you use OA these days, you probably won't be able. It's less damaging to the environment. And what I'm talking about environment is the mutation of bacteria than OA, because OA is really outdated, and then there's of course the resistant strain already there. But then the thing is that Cipro is our last defense. right now. Seriously.
Yeah.
If your Cipro is gone, we're all screwed, you know. But OA is already screwed. That's why Cipro is here. So that's
Yeah.
so when you use OA, yeah, I think that one of the reasons use OA is well, because it's a veterinary medicine, it's already screwed, so screw it more, probably won't make too much a dent. That's the way I look at it. But Cipro is really our last defense. There's really nothing else. So
I'd
seriously.
like, I understand people wanting to use antibiotics. I would feel more comfortable with the whole thing if it was done systematically instead of how we're doing it like the Wild West. And Chewy not being able to sell it anymore is a step that way. I understand that there's not a lot of vets that have any clue about what's going on in our tanks, right? But at the same time, these are powerful concoctions that we're tossing around like they don't do anything. And I think we should probably be a little more respectful of the world than to do that.
Yeah. And
also,
yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm going to run over you. We probably want to know that it actually works and what it actually works on, rather than dosing everything we can think of and hoping. And then when we see a result that we kind of like, then we recommend that everyone do the same thing we did, which is, kitchen sink antibiotics, which is not a great way to go. It doesn't help in any grand scheme, although it may have helped in one particular instance. But we could fix this. Somebody with a lot of money could throw a bunch of money at this and we could work it out.
So one important thing about using antibiotic is that when you go to the doctor need to diagnose to see which antibiotic to use on your particular disease, a symptom. But in our tank, I don't think anybody knows. So you see that one coral RTN. So what? You know what happened to it? Is it really bacteria related? And also the so-called brown jelly disease. Brown jelly disease does not exist. The boogeyman tell you that exists. Brown jelly disease is a symptom. It's not a cause. Yeah. So the thing is that your torch coral, your price Holy Grail torch get brown jelly. There's many cause can cause that. Because it only means that it's dying. That's what brown jelly is. The fat just melted, and then they rot it. That caused the brown jelly. Brown jelly disease does not exist. It can cause by many things. So, but if you see a brown jelly disease, and then you bomb your tank with antibiotic, it may not solve the problem at all. And also another thing, salt water. Actually, the ocean water was known to be the dirtiest water in the face of Earth. Well, our tank water probably about 10 times less dirty, but it's pretty dirty. That means that there's so many bacteria, especially a lot of gram-negative bacteria, majority of gram-negative bacteria in our tank. So how much do you want to dose? That's the big question. So there is no guideline to the dosage. If you dose too little, and then before the drug actually can reach your coral, they all get consumed, they all degraded, all the other bacteria just consume it all. And then what's the dosage? The question is that we do not know how much we should dose. Then how do you dose? And how do you know it's underdose? How do you know when you overdose? Because there's no data. There's no way. Yeah, you can. If you see a coral have brown jelly, the best thing to do is take it out and toss in the trash can. And that's the basic thing that you can do. Seriously, before that it spread to the other coral. And then you bomb your tank with a Cipro, it may not solve anything. But I do. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go. Nothing.
Okay. So I do read a comment that before this tonight's the Zoom meeting, there was on the Boston Reefer is talking about that one of the coral seller treating their tank like every 2 weeks. I forget exactly what number.
Oh my God!
Every 2 weeks with Cipro. Why they do that? Actually, there's an answer for that. Because that they're selling wild coral, they're wildly imported coral. They are not those tanks being treated by antibiotic, OA or whatever, and then they are not the growing tank. Try to treat your growing reef tank with antibiotic every 2 weeks. You will end up with a dead tank in no time, because that the bacteria is so important, and it's the whole living environment. The composition of bacteria, the amount of different type of bacteria is all critical for all the living things. It also same thing happen to human being too. So if you are farming the tank with a potent antibiotic every 2 weeks, you have no way your coral will grow in that environment. The reason they do that, because they're treating their holding tank for imported coral. So that, well, if it's ethical or not is a different story. I don't want to get into that. But the reason that they do that is because that is the holding tank for import coral. That's what it is. What they want to do is zap everything. So, but those tanks being treated periodically by antibiotic are not the permanent home for those coral.
Right.
They are just temporary housing for the merchandise before they reach the next step. That's why they bomb it with antibiotic. That's the reason. So that is something should never been done by home hobbyists, because that your coral supposedly is their permanent home. Yeah, if you do a full tank treatment for out of blue for no reason, you just keep it every 2 weeks to bomb the tank. And not only is irresponsible, I think it's kind of stupid. Sorry. That's I hope that I answered that question that posted on the Boston Reefer. So go ahead, Richard.
No, I think that I think we've covered that. I think it's a tough one. So I think it's just got to be done responsibly. And somebody who has a tank for 4 months and then grabs some antibiotics and throws it in the tank, it's not responsible.
Yeah. And that also including the Reef HD, for treating algae, and the antifungal reagent.
Yeah, no,
So,
you know what? Algae, you probably heard me talk about this before. You and herbivores are the answer to your algae problem.
Yeah,
There's no magic. I mean, there is magic, but if you resort to magic, you're not a good reefer.
You're a vibrant user.
which is really not true, but I like how piffy that sounds, and it should be a shirt.
So, Paul, what's our next topic?
I got one more question for you guys.
One more.
One more, and then I'm gonna spin the wheel of names. The wheel of names is club members participate in whoever wins will get a ReefBeef podcast t-shirt of their choosing and size.
Oh, fantastic.
So,
and by the way, I just take a second to go, I love that this club is still around and that you're still doing stuff.
Trying.
I'm saying thank you so much for trying. If we can help, let us know, because I think we took a big hit when the clubs went away. And that was before COVID. I think we need these smaller communities of reefers that know each other, that are working to have a good time and learn stuff and progress the hobby. And we need all these little enclaves. We just need to not have them be angry with each other like they were in the past. We're all on the same side trying to make the same thing happen. And if we can support all each other, reefing will get easier and the animals will have a better time. So thank you so much for your efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for the acknowledgement. We just recently reached out this past year to link up with LIRA, the Long Island Reef Association.
Oh, fantastic.
Tried it because like back in the day, not so much, obviously the two clubs were their own entities, but with Joe over at the Long Island Aquarium, in Lyra's club, they used to do like a fish collecting in the Long Island Sound. So I know that was something fun to do back in the day. If go to different club events and different hobbyists and stores or whatnot. And I reached out to them and they were like, yeah, unfortunately, that property where they had access, some, millionaire, billionaire bought it up, and now you can't access the sound in that particular area. But they invited us out to their event last October. We went down, set up a booth, and t-shirts, merchandise, gave a bunch of stuff away. So it's kind of cool to, get back in the good graces with other clubs. Like you said, we're all here for the same thing. It's education and camaraderie. There's way too much going on in the world for bickering and BS.
Yeah. Here.
Yeah. So would like to hear you guys' thoughts on dosing ammonia, and is it really practical or is it playing with fire?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some serious people that I take seriously have been doing it and say that they feel like it is helping. So much so, and I think the risk is very low. I think there's a very low risk of you damaging everything if you dose ammonia bicarb, let's say. I mean, if you overdose it, you're going to have a problem. But I think it's cheap and easy, so I'm okay with people trying it, and it's not that dangerous. Whether it does anything or not, I don't know. And I can tell you where I sit is I bought some, but I haven't even thought about dosing it, because I feed so much that I'm sure I'm producing a ton of ammonia, at least in this tank. But for next year, when I've got coral spawn again that have settled, I'm gonna I plan to start adding some of that to the mix of feeds, because if they are going to uptake it, and they don't have to catch it like they do with other foods, I think that will help the baby corals do what they need to do to get over the hump of survival. So I'll probably start dosing it just so I feel a little comfortable with it in the next couple of months, so I'm ready by December or January in the other room to use it. So that's a big I don't know. I kind of want the million monkeys to use it before I use it, but I've got an extenuating circumstance of baby corals, and so I can kind of look at the reasoning behind it and the research behind it and go, that could be helpful, and it's probably not going to kill everything. So I'm willing to use a Hail Mary pass at it. At the same time, a lot of the things that when people say that it works for them are things like my corals look better and my corals grow faster. And these, again, are coming from people who, like you were saying before, before ICP, you had a great tank. After ICP, you have a great tank. How can you credit ICP with you having a good tank? They had great coral and great growth before, in the past, before they were dosing ammonia. So I don't know. We see so many things come and go, flash in the pan in this hobby. Where is Zeovit? I'm sure there's some diehards out there, but no one really is pushing that anymore. No one's pushing ultra, UNLS, right? ULNS, excuse me. So
ultra low.
Yeah, the fads that come through, it's weird being an old person in this hobby or been in the hobby long enough. Not as long as Ben. Ben's been in it since like the 1600s. But you see the shape of reefing ideas. And you've got these new ideas that come and then they fall out and they fall out. They come and they fall out. They repeat every 10 years or so. And then under it, you see the same stuff that's been there all the time that everyone is saying, yeah, I don't know, but we know that this basic stuff seems to get you good tanks if you just do it. So, like I was saying before, I'd like new hobbyists to not experiment with stuff and not be on the cutting edge and understand, get a feel for what they're doing before they start messing with stuff. So that's a long way of saying, I don't know what's going on with ammonia yet.
So for the ammonia, actually, from scientific research paper they published, if it's true that ammonia is more preferable than nitrate as a nitrogen source for coral uptake, but unlike some of the YouTube videos saying that how difficult nitrate being absorbed by coral, that you have to buy the ammonia product. No, there is nitrate transporter on the surface of coral skin, which means that there is a mechanism for coral to take in nitrate and phosphate. So in the plant world is that coral can utilize nitrate and phosphate very effectively and actively. Of course, that at the same time, they also take in ammonia. Now the question is that if you have a many fish, you have you feed a frozen food of some sort. You just like Rich said, you have more than enough nitrogen source in the tank. There is a really does not lack of nitrogen in a reef tank. Seriously, if you even feed your fish. And another question is how much they can take in. Actually,
Yeah.
coral doesn't take in too much. And even you for example, I remember somebody said that if you have 10 fish in a 100-gallon tank, you feed them every day, you generate probably more than enough of waste to feed your coral. I think that's sort of like a very general, but that also represents some kind of there's some truth to it. It's basically your fish actually excrete ammonia, urea all the time. So also they poop just the pollinated the bacterial in your tank. So here comes the question: is that one of the measurement for saying that ammonia works is by measuring alkalinity consumption. That's what I heard.
Yeah.
People. But I think that has a fundamental flaw on that kind of measurement, because alkalinity is not only used by coral to build their skeleton. Alkalinity is actually one of the major carbon source for building organic materials. Your bacteria use alkalinity. Your soft coral use alkalinity. And if you dose ammonia in your tank, and the bacteria do take up many amount, the bacteria get the first dip of the ammonia. So they take them up. When they're growing, they consume alkalinity. Your alkalinity drop. It doesn't mean your coral actually, it doesn't mean your ammonia going to your coral. It actually ammonia going to the bacteria. If you use alkalinity as a measurement to saying that, okay, those ammonia work, I would say, no, that measurement is not accurate, not right. And also another thing is that when you do something new, you always has a placebo effect. So, oh, it looks great. The coral seems to grow faster. But where is the measurement? If you said, well, since alkalinity consumption, that is not a valid measurement for your coral growth, and by dosing that ammonia, and then what's the other measurement? You say, okay, the more coral grows. Did you take the coral out and wait it to see actually it grow like 50% faster than before? No, it's not ever been done. It's just all the placebo effect. Oh, I feel like things doing something like that. So dosing ammonia normally when you do it on a larger reef tank, it's much safer. And because that, for example, if you dose 10 drops or whatever concoction you make, and it's less likely to overdose ammonia to your tank, because unless your tank is only coral, no fish. Think about it, what 1 ppm or 2 ppm ammonia do to your fish. So that is something is another, in my own opinion, is that if the juice is not worth squeezing, something like that.
Yeah, the juice. I think that's the juice is not worth the squeeze. I think that's what a lot of these kind of fads, I guess, that come through. That's where I end up. With they're all usually based on one paper that someone pulls one piece of and says, "Oh, this is it." And the paper that said high phosphate, that everyone was excited. The paper that said that high phosphate was bad because it stopped calcification and slowed down growth. Now, the first one that everyone was all excited about with that, it turned out it was like 8% slower growth or 8% less dense. I'd have to look at my notes to remember which it was. And when that math came up, I went, oh, I so don't care about this at all. I do not care about 8% slower growth or 8% less dense skeleton. It's just not something that it's going to cross my mind to care about.
That's an interesting thing because I did look into where this phosphate thing come from. It actually, if I remember correctly, don't quote me that. Yeah, it happened to be 1975. There's a paper being published on that. Is that they speculate, hypothesize that phosphate can poison the chrysolatus of stony coral. That make the coral more porous and easy to break in the ocean, and hypothesize that. But the paper is a hypothesis. But now there is another experiment has been done in a laboratory. The experiment has been done is that 3 identical tanks, identical size. One has 0 phosphate, the other one is 0.5, and the last one, I remember, is 1 or 3 ppm of phosphate. They put fast-growing SPS in those 3 tanks. Guess what? The high phosphate tank the coral grows fastest, and the skeleton is more porous because they grow faster. That's what it is. And then how phosphate can poison the chrysolatus for the coral is a hypothesis. But why it becomes so popular? Because there's some company is using this paper as sort of scientific evidence to sell you GFO. And the 50 cents a pound wholesale thing, they can charge you $20 a pound. That is where this phosphate craze come from. So the high phosphate, actually even up to 1 ppm, there's really no evidence saying that, well, I mean, the laboratories, scientific studies showing that phosphate actually can poison the chrysolatus and slow down the growth. But on the other hand, the higher phosphate level do promote coral growth. That has been done. That is published.
So there's competing notes in the literature, and we absolutely see different stuff in different people's tanks. So, there's no conclusion there. We're talking about ammonia still, right? I think it's going to be the same thing where, some people are going to swear by it. Some people are going to not try it. Someone's going to kill their tank with it. And then people are going to stop using it and not see a difference. And that's going to be the end of it, except there's going to be people who are going to use it forever and swear that you have to use full spectrum ammonia. It will stay around, until someone actually does the work to figure it out, if it's even possible.
And also it's really that, does it really, the effort you put in, the way I look at it is that by dosing ammonia, is you put in effort to increase the risk of destroying your environment. That is because it's really not necessary. There really no such thing as the ultra low nutrient tank at all. It's just that we have the nutrient that we cannot measure, like organic content in the water.
Yeah.
So so we cannot measure. That doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So that is the basically, well, the way I look at it is that sit back, relax, enjoy the hobby, and then do less this risky stuff. So maybe you can increase your growth by 5% for home hobbyists. So what?
Who cares?
It makes no sense. Who cares? Well, but even a coral farm, if I can increase my coral growth by 5%, but also increase the risk of crashing my tank by 6%, I'm not going to do it. It's not really, well, everything you dump, any substance you dump into your tank, actually, you have a chance to upset the environment, the balance. Or the biological balance. So the best thing, actually, go ahead.
Oh, I'm going to say, Mike said, didn't people say the same thing about pH? Less dense SPS from lower pH. Yeah, they do. Now, we do have a little bit more research on pH levels because of ocean acidification. So, in fact, my friend Rebecca Albright at the Albright Lab had 2 articles in Nature looking at putting pH on natural reefs back up to 8.4. And you definitely do see a biological improvements. So, but again, what's the drop? What are you suffering by having your corals be at 8.1 versus 8.3 or 8.4? And that's where I think for most people, it's the same thing. The juice just isn't worth the squeeze. If it's easy for you to get your pH up, get it up. That's a no-brainer. When we moved into this house, this was in 2002 or 2003, it was like, great. I'm putting the sump in the crawl space and I'm putting an air pump outside and I'm pumping outside air into the sump and I can pump it wherever I want. I'm going to boost the pH as naturally as I can because why not? It's cheap, it's easy. And in fact, that air pump's been running almost the entire time, right? But if you're inside and you're in an apartment and you have windows and you can't just drill a hole through, or you live next to a death factory, or it's 2 degrees outside or 1,000 degrees outside, that gets harder to do. And your pH inside is suppressed to like 8.1 or 8 or even 7.9. I wouldn't lose much sleep over it, because, like we talked about way at the beginning with the controller, we're going to do what's practical to do for our enjoyment of the hobby. And if you get all caught up in, raising your pH, 1 point, while it does make a difference, is the difference worth it? And if you think it's worth it, drill a hole in your house and be done.
I think that the ocean is a lot more complicated in terms of life form than our reef tank. So the pH increase in the ocean can actually impact a lot more in a whole ecosystem way, and in turn affecting the coral. So, but our reef tank actually is a lot simpler than the ocean. So we have seen throughout the year the pH can as high as 8.5, 8.4, as low as 7.8. There's a reef tank, the thriving reef tank, all on all those pH. And another important thing is that the seawater is a gigantic buffer. What a buffer does? Hold the pH in range. So the thing is that, another important thing is that it's the measurement thing. For example, a guy told me he runs his tank at 8.6 all the time, and sometimes 8.9, and his coral looks like crap. I said, well, that's kind of, yeah. So he bring the water to me. I measure the water. The water is 7.4. So the thing is that a pH probe is an interesting thing. First of all, for the laboratory pH probe, you don't see them constantly dip into a salt water or any water. They use it, they clean it, they put them back into the pH probe, potassium chloride solution. pH probe are not meant to be constantly dipped into this thing and still to be accurate. So accurate, I understand, Rich, you use it to see the trend. That's perfectly fine. Accuracy and the consistency are two different things. So your pH probe can always reading 7.8 or something like that. And then, but if it's consistent, that means that not much thing change in your tank. But that 7.8 can be 8.2 and can be 7.4 for the absolute value. So basically for most of the home hobbyists, you are not able to read the actual pH in an accurate way. Even you calibrated your pH probe all the time. So the thing chasing 0.1 pH change is meaningless using a hobby grade pH probe. If you really want to do that, I suggest you to buy a $600 pH meter.
Yeah.
And then
we used to say stuff like, aim for 8.2 or 8.3. And that way, if you're off, you're still in a good range. And like with salinity, aim for 34.5 or 34. And if it slides, you're okay. So,
Yeah, I like the alkalinity around 8 to 9. So if you drop one, you can so what? 7 and 10, something like that. So always there's a range there is tolerable. And also another important thing is that coral can sustain short-term discomfort, parameter swing. No problem at all. Try to imagine try to think about all the importers what pH they get when they receive the coral from the LAX airport. What kind of alkalinity they get? It's horrifying. Those kind of things. But the coral is perfectly fine because for short term, all these parameters, it doesn't have to be that narrow a band in terms of stability. The stability actually pretty wide. So like the pH, well, there's one thing I still don't understand is that many YouTube video link the pH to the calcification of stony coral. I don't see too much evidence of that. It may be other biological process that affect the stony coral via the pH, but calcification is hard to think about. The reason for that is that coral do its calcification internally through the internal chamber, inside the internal pocket. And the pH of the internal pocket is biologically controlled by the coral. So I think the pH may impact the coral by other factors, other biological process, like a proton pump, because pH is a concentration of proton. So it might affect the proton pump or anything because the biological thing, for example, that, well, hard to think about example in the real life, it basically, it might affecting something else other than the calcification. Because we do see that zoanthus can affect it by coral, or by pH, large pH change. Zoanthus has no skeleton. So then so many many environmental impact that we saw in ocean, it actually is a combined effect. It's not just the pH alone. It's a combination of many, many different effects. For example, that like the tourism, farming, and agricultural runoff, overfishing, and destroying the herbivores colony, that is a big thing. Overfishing basically reduce the algae control. So the algae would take over. So that is the many, many other things that totally it has a combined effect on the coral reef. It's not just the pH and carbon dioxide alone. So that's the way I look at it in terms of the pH.
Nice.
Back to you, Paul.
I literally got one more quick thing for both of you. What's the top 3 things that you'd tell somebody coming into the hobby? Don't do it would be my first one.
No, absolutely do it. The top 3 things. One is join a reef club. Seriously, talk to people in person.
Right.
Visit somebody and look at their tank and listen to the what they say about. You want to duplicate the success. So that's the one thing, is to make friends and go look at your a second thing is support your local fish store. Seriously. That's very important. Because that's well, most likely you gain a hobby because of the local fish store, and also that you do get your first basic advice from them. Either how do you evaluate their most advice is a different story, but some of the basic thing is always true. So then keep them around is actually keep your hobby going. For example, I consider myself as a local coral store. I don't care. I don't sell fish. I have all sorts of equipment, like the pumps, power head, the life support equipment. So many times people call me up at 10 o'clock at night that the pump fell. Do I have a spare? I said, sure. I put one outside my door. You come pick it up. Well, try to do it Amazon Prime. Even you have a next day delivery, it's still about 12 hours, and your coral gonna die. Second thing, support your local fish store. Third thing is that don't watch too much YouTube videos. Seriously, especially infomercial. And that's the top 3 things, I think. Rich?
Keep your tank at 8.4. Use the best salt, and only get popular corals. No. The top 3. The first one would be Jason says read books. Get a mentor or mentors, which is very much like join the club. Find people you know that you can talk to. and see their tanks. Start with a learning tank. 10, 20, 30 gallon, all in one, easy, doesn't take up space, not too expensive, and play with that for 6 months to a year to understand what's going on and what you actually like and what you want to do. And then beware of trends, which I guess, I don't know what I meant when I wrote that, but I guess it probably means get the coral that you like, not the coral that you're supposed to like because it's expensive. That would be my 3.
Oh, that's good. That's
Yeah,
good.
that's good. That's good.
All right, I want to thank you guys both immensely. Yeah, I mean, this was a long stream. I enjoy it. I enjoy hearing from people that have been in the hobby or the industry a lot longer than I have. I'm going on year 20, and every day it's like something new, you know. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna share my screen and spin the wheel of names, just like I was saying, whoever was here at the time. We'll get a ReefBeef podcast t-shirt sent to their house. So let me see if I
Swinging.
can share my screen. All right, I'm not gonna spin it and burn it 3 times. I'm just going now. If you can all see it, it'll let me know. Chris Sturgis, we good? Thumbs up.
Yep, we're good.
All
I'm
right,
gonna
cool.
end the YouTube live stream.
All right, buddy. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Bingo, bango. Oh, pick me, pick me. Oh, is that crazy? Did I win? You guys probably don't have